It's another episode of the Christian Reeve podcast. But before we get into it, are you subscribed? If not, please make sure to subscribe, like and share the video and spread the word. Because the Christian Reeve podcast is here to stay. I love doing this and I love all of you that support me. So thank you. And yeah, let's get into this podcast, shall we? Boom! Hello and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve podcast. Today's guest is an upcoming podcaster, an artist, and aspiring actress, all the way from Minnesota in the United States. I hope I don't butcher this. Her name is Eleanora Lynn Åaske.
Åaske.
Åaske. Oh, I was so close. Åaske. Okay, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I got my dogs with me, and I got my tea and just getting cozy.
I like you already. As soon as someone says they have animals, I'm like, okay, we're friends. It's like, do you know what I mean? I know this is ridiculous, but a lot of the time, if I'm just meeting someone for the first time and let's say like you walk into someone's house, right, and they've got a dog and the dog's like really happy, you're like, they can't be that bad. Do you know what I mean?
If the dog's happy, then
yeah, but this is what I mean.
Okay.
This is what I mean. If they've got a pet and the pet's happy, it's like this must be a good person, because you can't be a bad person and have a happy pet. I don't know. For me, the two things don't equate. But I don't know. Anyways, yeah, you've been working on this podcast for the past 5 years. This is the information that I received for you.
That is the number, isn't it?
I'm obviously intrigued by this. I would imagine if that's the case, then there's obviously been a lot of things that have sort of come as like maybe barriers and stuff in life, which I understand, like everyone has these things. But on the one side of things, I am kind of really intrigued, like what it will be about. Obviously, since it's taken so much time, has there been a lot of planning behind it? What is this podcast going to be about?
Yeah, actually, I knew right away, like what it would be like. I knew what it would entail, and what I wanted the general vibe to be, and I think the general purpose even, but I wasn't quite sure the why or the what. I knew sort of the how, but I didn't know the why or the what. And so the why has changed quite a bit over time. At first I was like, I don't know, I love the conversations that I have with my friends. I think they're very important. I would love to facilitate more of them and share that. And I was like, but why? And at first I thought it was about the relationships I had with them. No, not at all. I thought it was something to do with me. And I mean, that's kind of true, just because by nature of how I am, every conversation I have with someone ends up being kind of incredibly emotionally involved. I can be kind of a drain, and that's not like, I'm not talking down on myself, like I mean that.
What do you mean when you say that? Do you mean like as in when you talk to someone, they get sort of, how can I put this in the best possible way? No, because I want to make sure that I'm actually asking the right question. So, because when you said that straight away, I figured, okay, so you're an empath? Would that be fair to say?
I think it's more that I overanalyze everything, and people aren't used to that 24/7.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So, like, what you're saying is it's like difficult to have a conversation with you because you're very, questioning every sort of facet of that conversation. So it's like, is that kind of what you're saying?
I think so. I think every conversation with me gets at least a little bit introspective, and people aren't used to having to think that way. I mean, even my friends are very introspective people, and yet they've said to me, in all honesty, it's like I have to have a lot of energy left before we have a long talk.
Do you never just like because the thing is, I love conversations like that too, deep conversations. Like I would say, I can count on my hands how many like friends I have. And a lot of people listening to this will be like, what? So you don't consider me a friend? What I mean by that is that there are many people that you know in life that you're friendly with, but people that are very close to you that you can have like a deep conversation with about literally anything, there's very few. And the people in my life know who they are. To bring that back to what we're saying, those types of conversations, yeah, they can be very introspective. They can go in all sorts of directions. But the interesting thing is that, you say it's draining, but I wonder with that, because for me, the only people that I find draining, like as in it actually sucks my energy away when I'm talking to them, is those sorts of people. I mean, you could call them energy vampires, there's different words for them, but those people that, you have that conversation with them and they're not interested in giving you something. It's just like take. And it's not just those people. I mean, I think when you're talking to negative people in life, that can be quite draining, particularly if you're a positive person, because you're trying, I mean, do you know what I mean? You're trying to give them something. You're trying to say, hey, have you considered this? And just everything gets knocked down one by one, and like I've been there because I used to be a negative person years ago. And often hearing a positive person would just be like, oh, you're sanctimonious. Oh, what do you know? Oh, like it will never get better. And then, obviously you're proven wrong, but it takes a lot to change that. Am I in the right boat? Am I in the right kind of space here? Is that kind of what you're talking about?
I guess, I mean, more along the lines of, okay, so what I've now decided the podcast is about is it creates a space for us to process some of the things that we might not have otherwise. So, a lot of the time when I get into a conversation with someone, I don't do this consciously, but I find whatever it is that they haven't been thinking about back of their mind, and we end up going into it, and it ends up being, kind of energy consuming for them. For me, it's just every day. But
you see, it's kind of the point of what I was trying to raise. It's like if you're with the right people, then it's never draining. Like I've had like conversations that have lasted like 6 hours before and felt fine afterwards. And then I've had other conversations where I've been talking to someone for 45 minutes, half an hour, and I feel exhausted. So I think that tells you a lot about the people that you talk to. It's like, what do you know what I mean? Because I think a conversation should always, normally it should be like tennis. But with that being said, I mean, it depends, doesn't it? Sometimes, I find as I've become older, I listen more and talk less. Obviously here, where it's a bit different, but like in real life, I've spoken about this many times, I used to be that guy that would just talk, blah, blah, blah. But obviously as you get older, you read more, you listen more, and then you start thinking, well, I don't need to spit. Like, what I'm not learning anything by speaking. Do you know what I mean? And this is the thing. I find a lot of people are not listening. So, you're just wasting your breath talking to them. It's just like, well, they're not listening to me. I don't have an ego. I don't care if they're listening to me or not. That's their loss, whatever. But like, it's like, it's like, but so many people are obsessed with that. So many people have this like need to be heard. And it's like, it's a waste really for the most part. But anyway, I think we're getting somewhere with regards to figuring out what your podcast is about. This is interesting. But the first kind of thing that makes me think is that obviously you mentioned in the beginning that you were having particular types of conversations with people. So obviously the idea popped into your head, this could be a podcast. This could be a thing. This could be right.
Which I feel like is pretty commonly how that ends up.
yeah, of course. But I think that because I've heard a lot of podcasts over the years that are just literally just like a couple of people talking, and I I think there's a big difference between having a podcast and then people just talking and putting it online and going, yeah, you need to have a format. With this, and something to follow is what I mean by that. And I think with this, you've got something here. I'm intrigued though. Are you going to have your friends on and it's just going to be you and your friends talking and the focus is the topics, or is it going to be kind of an open platform like my podcast where it's like people from all walks of life, and you're just trying to get the same thing out of them? Because obviously it's difficult, isn't it? Like it's the same risk I go into with every podcast that I do. I never know if my guest is going to be really quiet and I have to talk more, or if they're going to be leading it and then I just guide it and listen, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I would hope eventually I'd be able to do more of an open-ended thing. I guess right now, so we've been recording some episodes for a while now, and I found the sweet spot is 3-hour sessions. And each of these 3-hour sessions,
Damn.
each of these 3-hour sessions gets about 55 minutes of audio. So
hold on. So from a 3-hour conversation, there's about 55 minutes you can actually use.
yeah.
So is this just a lot of like trying to formulate the idea? I mean, okay. What I find interesting about that is that, you know, one could make the argument, well, you know, how do you know what to use and what not to use? Yeah, what are you looking for in that? What determines whether or not it makes the final cut?
So a lot of what ends up happening will go on a lot of tangents because the person that I've been recording with most is my friend Orla, and we both got ADHD, and we both kind of just, so many different branches are made that the final tree does not have to span that wide. You know what I mean? And then the other thing that happens is that because we're processing things like actively in the moment, we're not just talking about things, we're bringing things to the table and actively processing them. There is like a lot of just sitting there figuring out what it is that's going on in your head. And then eventually, after some rambling, you'll have gotten to the point and you'll be able to explain what the past rambling has been about. And obviously, you know, in the moment, because we're close, I can tell what they're talking about, they can tell what I'm talking about, but it's only that last bit that really the public could consume and be like, ah, yes, I know what they're talking about.
It's almost sounds like a different kind of conversation. I don't know. I'm kind of bewildered a bit by this. Do you or one of your guests like come to the table with like an initial topic and then it just, as you say, goes on to tangents there? Is there like because the thing is, and I mentioned this before, to have a good podcast, you need something that the listener can follow, rough format, right? And obviously like for instance, if I look at my podcast, I kind of think about, okay, what kind of things would the viewer likely want to know about this person? What's a sensible thing to ask here, and blah blah blah. So like, talk us through a little bit about the structure. You know, obviously you've said a lot of it is you know, going from tangents, going from idea to idea, and then condensing that down into something. But you know, you must have something that you kind of work with to at least steer the conversation.
Yeah. So I knew right away if I didn't come in with it with a goal in mind, it would go absolutely nowhere, because this is kind of how a lot of the conversations with my loved ones go. Also, a good distinction would be they're not so much guests as they are co-hosts, which usually goes terribly. There's many memories in my head of people being like, ah, yes, my good friend, and now we're going to talk about football for an hour, and it's not going to go anywhere. So I definitely wanted there to be a goal that we were working towards, that we're, you know, processing and working through things in a specific direction. So I've decided to go with several series. The one we're recording now is actually going to be the first one we release, since it's so time sensitive. It's 2020 year in review. And so that's got a very clear, hopeful end, which is to realize, like, through all of the shit that this has been, what each of us have kind of learned in that, and what the overall theme has been. But like with my friend Orla, we're working on a series about routines, because neither of us have had a proper routine before. Well, she's had routines, but they were all like outside inflicted. You know, you get a job and you're like, ah, yes, routine, and then it ends up not actually fitting with what's natural for you. And like, if she doesn't have a job, if she doesn't have anything going on, I think a lot of us are noticing right now that our routines kind of completely fall off and we don't have any. And so I thought that was kind of relevant. And so, you know, in starting that, we were just going to talk about our history with routines. And you think there's no way you can spend 3 hours saying, I've never had a routine. We ended up actually talking more about mental health and how that kind of plays into it. And yeah, I think it generally does find a sort of flow, probably more so with my partner than with Orla, because we both kind of branch off so much. But it ended up actually being Mental Health Awareness Day. So that was pretty great. Or World Mental Health Day. Yeah, World Mental Health Day. So that was kind of great because, oh, look, we totally planned that. You know, we're kind of bringing that theme into our lives as well, apart from the podcast, and kind of documenting how that's going, what we're noticing, you know, sort of things we might not have noticed before. Like with Orla, she has this tendency to, when she doesn't feel like she has control over her life, find something else to take control for her. So like, you know, previously, so she's living in Italy. She's working as an au pair, which is basically a nanny and an English teacher from another country. Well, a nanny and their native language teacher to the children from another country. And so with her first job in a while, she was feeling like she didn't have much control. She didn't have much of a routine. She would sleep in forever. And then like all of her time would just be spent on the kids because she'd be kind of just lounging around for the rest of it. And so she started taking classes. And while that was great, suddenly she still didn't have time for any of those extra things that really would have helped her flourish. And we didn't have time to record, and it just wasn't ideal. And I'm noticing something similar in myself in the past. So I've kind of got the opposite problem, where if I start getting overwhelmed by things, if I feel like I'm not in control, I start dropping things and think, okay, now I can, you know, get into control. I can spend my time how I feel it would be best spent for my well-being. And it turns out that's really hard, especially if you don't have something that you can just stick to. And something you can rely on. So, yeah, where was I going with this?
Originally, I sort of asked you sort of the setup of the podcast. You know, like obviously we looked at that, what guests you would have, if you would have guests on the show, and then we kind of transitioned to just the general kind of formatting of the show.
Yeah, the direction.
Right.
Yeah.
But like moving it forward, obviously you mentioned that, you know, you've got a couple of episodes sort of already planned. They're going to be about 55 minutes. What's the schedule as far as, you know, publishing is concerned? Is it going to be like one a week, for example? Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So I'm trying to get as many things recorded as possible before I start releasing things. Just because I know that I will always have trouble sticking to a recording schedule. So if I can do it per series, I can release them for a while and hopefully have some lined up by the time I start the next series. But I'm thinking probably bi-weekly, once every 2 weeks. is going to be a good spacing, because obviously I've followed podcasts that do once a month, and it's kind of disappointing because I'll not have caught up in a long time, and I'll be like, oh, I have so much content to consume, and then it'll be 2 episodes. I'm like, oh, shucks. Yeah.
Makes me laugh about mine, because I used to do a podcast before this, and we only did like 7 episodes, and it was once a week on an agreed date, and it just stressed me the hell out, like so much. I don't know why as well. Like it's weird. And then I started my own podcast when that one ended, and I do way more now. Like it's nuts. Like it's never about quantity. Quality is always far more important. But you know how it is sometimes. Like I reached out to the world. I said, hey, who would like to appear on this podcast, blah, blah, blah. And obviously that's how I met yourself. That's how I meet many of my guests. Sometimes people reach out to me, and I'm a bit of a workaholic. You know, I love to work, and I always reason that, you know, sometimes you just have loads of work. Sometimes you have very little work, right? And so I just keep my foot on the gas pedal. Sorry for the cliches, but, you know, it's just the best way to explain it. But bringing it back to the point, like, I don't have that kind of schedule because I get stressed about it. And I kind of think, look, the content's there when it's there. And I'll never let there be like too big of a gap between, you know, when the last episode was and the next episode was. And, you know, I have like a contingency plan sort of thing. So like the main purpose of this podcast is to have interviews with people, to get to know people, have discussions if possible, blah, 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 right? Obviously I'm looking to change that moving forward, have more content on here, different types of content, etc. But at the same time, sometimes you just, you know, you can't find any guests. Sometimes you just have to like look at like, okay, what do I have to work with? Excuse me. And so sometimes I've done like me only episodes where it's just me talking, and that's a real challenge. I think the best time I did, personally, my own personal viewpoint, people can disagree with me, was when I did an episode just talking about university, and it was just me talking about it. But I kind of realized that, you know, it's always going to be better to have people here. I think it's just more interesting as a viewer and a listener to hear a discussion as opposed to someone just talking. I've heard
And I think also it provides a sense of involvement, because if it's just a monologue, you know you're listening to a monologue. If you're listening to someone else's conversation, obviously you can't weigh in, but it still kind of feels like a conversation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's very challenging. Like I still approach it the same way, but it's nowhere near as enjoyable. But, you know, sometimes you have to put them out there just to kind of keep the podcast going, because I really am serious about it. I want to keep it going. And I'm always working on it. But anyway, I think that sounds very promising for your podcast as far as that's concerned. I think bi-weekly or bi-weekly it was, yeah. Sounds like a pretty good kind of setup. I can't believe there's podcasts that only release once a month. That's not enough. Like, Jesus. I mean, and I think it's bad. It works against you because, I mean, you should always put the same level of effort into it, right? But like, imagine you're a really avid fan of a podcast and they only release 1 episode a month, and you get to that day and then you just don't enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is one of the reasons.
Then you have to wait another month. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, and let's be real. If you're a listener, if you're listening to a podcast and you didn't like this one, and the next month it's crap as well. I mean, this is subjective, but right, you just be like, oh, nah, I'm just not gonna listen anymore. Whereas at least, I don't know, with my podcast, like, I just use it as an example. You know, it happens quite regularly. Every guest is different. I challenge anyone to find an episode that was bad, to be fair. I mean, it might sound egotistical, but look, I'm very, very proud of the interviews, I have to say. If anyone wants to say that the episodes where it was just me talking was crap, hey, take as many shots as you want. I'm not a big fan either, but I'm very proud of the interviews. I think there's always something there. But yeah, no, I think it's good to be as kind of to post as many as you can, I think, just so your audience has something. And I think, every podcast is different. Some have less, some have more, and you kind of find your footing based on what's comfortable for your specific podcast. Now,
Yeah.
with your podcast, is it going to be audio only, or is it going to be a video podcast as well?
Mostly audio only. I think maybe once in a blue moon I might record video, but I think I found video to be kind of distracting just for the sort of thing that we're doing. Um, uh,
Why is that?
my friend has maybe it's just me because the last time we recorded, I was the only person not on video and I wasn't looking at their video. But I think for me, I definitely notice people's facial expressions more, and it kind of catches me off guard. Like if I'm talking about something very vulnerable, even though these are my closest friends in the whole wide world, if I'm talking about something kind of vulnerable and I see a facial expression, I'll want to question that, when like it's not really going to do the podcast any service for me to be like, wait, what? Why
are you laughing? This is a serious story.
Oh, nothing. I just saw this tweet. Oh.
Why are you on your phone? How dare you? How rude. Yeah, I get what you mean. But do you not think, okay, let's play devil's advocate for a second, because this is one of the reasons I set up the video as well. I had people, I think I was like 20 episodes in, something like that, and people were like, why don't you do video? And I was like, well, I wasn't really sure I could do it at that point. Found a way, blah, 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 right? But one thing I remember someone said to me, which I have to agree with, is that when you can see the person, you can have a much better conversation as far as, being able to, see how they react to stuff, seeing that, I think, helps the conversation. Sometimes when it's just audio only, right, here's a good example, right? So when you're talking, I can kind of tell before you're finished that it's coming to the end of that point and I can move on to the next thing, right? You can't tell that if it's audio only. It'll just be abrupt and then there's more gaps and stops. Now, obviously, I know that you said that it's distracting for you based on your style, but do you not think that maybe you're losing some stuff as well by it only being video only? Sorry, audio only.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That would be an interesting podcast.
Yeah, just no talking and just.
I mean, I guess it would make sense if it was in sign language, but I don't know.
Or if you're a mime,
I don't know
mime
whether.
podcast.
Yeah. I don't know how wide of a reach that would get.
I bet you someone has done that. This is such a stupid world.
Sure.
There's people who stream on Twitch who get 3,000 viewers every day, and here I am busting my ass since March, and I struggle to get one viewer. There's people literally sleeping in their bed doing nothing, and they stream that, and they get 3,000 viewers a day. I guarantee there's a podcast out there where there's no talking and it's just people.
You say that, and I have to laugh because I remember. So that what was her name? I don't even remember what her name was, but the streamer who was caught bullying a person with cancer, and then
I didn't know this.
Maybe you didn't hear about this. Oh yeah, no. So she bullied a person with cancer, I think on the stream, and she was basically saying like, no bitch, like no, my fans will never like leak this, they'll never tell anyone. It's like, wow, how airheaded do you have to be? But anyway, she ended up falling asleep on stream, and while she was asleep, her dad was yelling at her sister, and he revealed some personal information. So her fans went and found the company, sent them the video of her bullying the person with cancer, and he got fired. And so he kicked her out. And of course, she streamed being kicked out. She called the police and lied, saying her dad was threatening her life. It's this big thing. Well, anyway, when I was watching that, I was thinking, how do you fall asleep on stream? And then I haven't talked about this yet, but when I stream, it's mostly like sort of play it in the background and kind of just do things with me, because I notice that when people are doing things on stream, it like kind of motivates me to get up and do stuff.
What kind of stuff?
This past, I do something called sunrise tea on Mondays, and it's literally just I make tea, I sit down, I play some records, and I plan for the week, and that's it. That's the whole thing, and it usually takes like 5 hours. And this past one, I had moved to my bed because it was too hot at the window, and all I remember is laying down with the dogs, the dog leaving, and then the next thing I knew, I was turning off the stream because, oh, I'm sleeping. And that was it. Like, I didn't even say goodbye or anything. I just was sleeping. So
do you get a lot of people coming in? You get like a big audience for this?
No, not yet. No. I mean, I've just started doing it, but the people who do watch come in pretty frequently, and it's kind of weird because I don't know what sort of boundaries to have for myself, since it's such a small reach.
Yeah.
That these people are becoming my friends, you know, these regulars. And is that a problem? Should I not make internet friends with my audience? Well, then they're not really an audience, are they? Do we want new people to be like, oh, what, like, why are your friends in here? I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it.
Well, let's start with the interactions. I mean, so they come here. Do you talk to them like a lot, or like what's the deal? Because I'm a bit confused here. You said that it's like a thing where you're drinking tea, you're setting up for your day, right? So it's kind of like a, hey, let's wake up together kind of deal, right?
Yeah.
But you must be having interaction with them. So it's kind of like, hey, how's your day going? Here's how mine's going, blah, blah, blah. Okay, see you later kind of deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Regarding your point, go on, please.
Well, I was going to say, when I'm on Reddit, that's what happens, and it becomes a conversation. When I'm on Twitch, there's usually nobody there, right, who's talking. So
story of my life.
There's not really any interaction happening. But I'm doing it anyway, because if you stick at something for long enough, something's gotta happen, right?
I don't know. For me,
but
I get success with YouTube. With Twitch, it's once in a blue moon. Most of the time, it's just me there on my own, cutting the video up for YouTube, and that's it.
And they've got awful customer service. I mean, well,
they have customer service. Wow.
User service, user help service. I don't know. What do you call that?
No, I'm just surprised Twitch has customer service. I mean, they don't do anything for creators anyway, so I'm surprised that they have people on support.
That they even
there.
have it. That they even put up contact us.
Well, the thing is, Twitch is owned by Amazon, right? And we all know that Amazon, or the Jeff Bezos, he don't give two shits about charity or helping people or anything. It's just money. Like this during this COVID time, I hate to be on a rant here, but just real quickly, he's made dollar during this time. Like, he's made more bank than any person can even imagine. He got divorced recently, and that still didn't put a dent in his wealth. Like, he don't care. And I'm pretty sure with Twitch, it's like, okay, we own this, because he acquired it within the last 5 years or something. And, you know, we've seen like recent changes with Twitch with things like, you know, the DMCA stuff, you know, trying to protect music and copyright and stuff. I'm sure there's some sort of deal there that profits them or benefits them in some shape or form. I don't know. It's surprising, but yeah, took us through your experience with them. How did that end?
Oh my! Well, it hasn't yet. That's the problem.
Oh, it's ongoing.
So
okay.
Yeah. So the first thing that happened was I had a stream that was expiring in 2 days. So I made a highlight. And the highlight was processing, and I spent multiple hours creating this highlight, because with the nature of these streams, I'm not going to have, 5 hours saved forever. And so I'm clipping up just the interesting bits. And so it takes multiple hours to do this in browser, and try not to lose it. And so I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to let it process, in quotes, process. And so, yeah, 2 days went by, it expired, it was still processing. And I kind of knew, okay, it's lost. But I know that, archives exist, and maybe there's like 24 hours before something's truly overwritten, you know what I mean? But so I contacted them, and I was like, hey, this problem. And the title was highlights, quote unquote, processing. And the reply I got, I never said anything about clips, so this had to have been a person, not a computer. There's what seemed to be a pre-written automated response saying, yes, unfortunately, Twitch broadcasts do expire. Once a clip is deleted, it cannot be recovered because of space issues. So unfortunately, and I'm like, I didn't delete anything. And so I replied to that, and obviously I was like, well, nobody's gonna get this. So I submitted another ticket, and oh, okay, good to know. I've gotten loud. Oh, the highlights. So oh yeah, so I submitted another ticket, and I got nothing. So I submitted another ticket, and the days are going by. I'm not just doing it within hours, And I got really salty in the tickets, but I know nobody's reading them, so what does it matter? No replies, no replies. A week later, after I submitted my last ticket, I get a tell us how we did email. And I'm like, why would you put that on a timer? Why would you put that on when cases are closed? Unless they're legitimately closing cases without even opening them.
Probably.
So obviously I left terrible feedback. I swore nobody's gonna read it anyway. So there we go. That's what happened. And I've done a couple more highlights that are still quote unquote processing. I'm not able to keep any of my streams.
Well, a couple of things here. One, yeah, don't take it personally. All the companies like this. YouTube is the same. I just recently got another community strike. I got one about 4 or 5 months ago for a podcast clip. They never got back to me. I tweeted to them like several times, nothing. I've appealed this latest one, and we'll see if they get back to me, but probably not. And yeah, just going on that experience of yours, I think that they just probably just don't feel like they have to or need to. It's like they've got nothing to lose.
They've got their partners. That's all that matters.
But Twitch is only one platform. There are many others, many emerging ones. And also, the funny thing is, they really take a massive cut. There was a guy that did a video on this recently, Devin Nash, I believe his name is, and he kind of broke down like all of the different platforms and like what you earn from it and what they earn. And Twitch takes like 90% of the overall ad revenue, which is nuts to think about. 90%. 90. Whereas like Facebook and that take like 30 or 20, it's like Twitch is just one option. It's just because it's owned by Amazon, it's like they've got to take their massive, cut, I guess. But the thing is, because it's such a well-established platform, and when people think of streaming, they mostly think of Twitch.
Yeah.
Other options will, become available. I've been streaming a lot on DLive, YouTube. It's possible, but I guess it's just difficult to go up against Amazon. Hey-ho.
Yeah, well, because I started out just doing stuff on RPen on Reddit, and I love that shit. I still do, but I wanted to do longer ones, and I wanted, you know, for it to mostly be returning people, because it's so hard to parse through the chat when it's so full of, do you support Trump? Why, like, just random sort of insulting questions and comments, and it's like, why are you here?
So
Like,
this is
are you gonna do anything interesting? And it's like, if all the other people here are interested, why are you over here being like, are you gonna do something interesting?
so this is streaming on Reddit, right?
Yeah.
So I've seen people streaming on Reddit before, but talk us through this, because this is kind of quite new to me. Like occasionally I'll see on a Reddit timeline like, oh, this person has 5,000 people watching, and I'm like, really, on Reddit? Like, I mean, Reddit's great for conversations and memes and shit, but like for live streaming, like what's the process there? How does it work?
It's so unique, and I love the culture that it has created. I just got done complaining about outcroppings of the culture, but overall I do love the culture. It's the way that they originally advertised it when they did their beta testing back in 2019,
So
or
it's
was
new
it
then.
2018? I don't even remember. Was that it was, you know, for the weirdos and the unique things out there that need to be broadcasted. And so, like, yeah, when it started out, obviously it was just a bunch of people like streaming their TV and chatting with people and watching TV at the same time. Or like the first stream I ever did, I felt like making udon, and I was like, I feel like streaming this. Let's make udon with strangers on the internet. And it was so fun. And now we're kind of seeing this whole busking culture. So if you've got anything that you can use to busk online, doing it on Reddit is great, because it's just like busking in real life. People are going about their day scrolling through Reddit. They see you, they're interested, they click on it, they listen, they leave a tip, and they leave. It's actually pretty unique, and I'd be interested into looking into this further and like where it could possibly go. But some people are getting annoyed because there's so many musicians, and like everybody's asking for tips, and it's like, nobody's asking for tips. They've got their Venmo up there, but nobody's asking for tips. So I think it's pretty unique and cool. And then you've also got people like just doing streams where they dance. Like this one kid does I dance harder with every, I think it was chat, or maybe it was award even. I wasn't even sure. But he starts out just like moving his finger, and then when someone comes on, he'll like go like and it's just so entertaining to see like how it evolves. And I don't know if you've seen this, but one of the most popular ones lately has been Noodle Man. And so it's this person has got this little like living room set up with like neon things in it, and it's got like a little marquee that says Noodle Man. And then they've got like noodles on strings, and they're like, you know, those toys that they've got lights on the inside, and then the outside they've got these rubber sort of, whoa, a dog left.
Okay, for those
those
listening at home that won't have seen that, basically Eleanora's dog just decided to move, and obviously, as you know, when that happens, that's chaotic if you've got a streaming setup. So basically just jumped up and everything went to shit. It's quite funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm lucky my laptop didn't hit the floor, to be honest.
I love dogs so much. They're wonderful, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds pretty crazy that they do that on Reddit, though.
Yeah.
But it's
And
different.
so but yeah, so the Noodle Man, I gotta finish telling you about this, because it's too crazy and it's too perfectly Reddit. So it's got this thing fashioned out of like these little noodles, and they're like neon. It's got like a black light in there, and then he's having the noodles dance, and it's usually like to some sort of club music. And he's got a little pole that he'll lower in sometimes, and the noodles will dance on the pole, and it looks like nobody moves that way, but it looks so real, and it's just it's heartwarming. I don't know why. Modern puppeteering, everyone. Modern puppeteer busking is neon noodles pole dancing. So
That's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing that I've found with us going into lockdown online is that everyone's kind of trying their hand at content creation. A lot more
Yeah.
people are giving it a go. But I think a lot of people are realizing how difficult it is, because just because you can create content doesn't mean it's any good. And it's subjective, don't get me wrong, but like I do feel like it's you've got to put an effort in. Do you know what I mean? When it's dancers, musicians, I mean, they're already putting a lot of effort in anyway for their craft, right? But like, for
Right.
instance, when I look at like the streams that I do and the YouTube podcasts and stuff, like it, for those who've never done it, they might look at this and go, "Oh, it's easy. You just show up, start talking, ask questions. That's not difficult. Trust me." It is. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, like research. Every time I get a new guest, I have to go and look that person up and figure out what the hell am I going to ask this person. You know,
Right.
there isn't, and a lot of the time I don't. I use my questions as like a guide, but I kind of rely on ad-libbed questions, and also hopefully that the conversation will go well and that there'll be some chemistry and stuff. You know, there's a lot of things that you hope for, but you know, when I look at like the live streams that I do, I find it interesting that people are interested in just hearing me talk. I think that's intriguing because, and maybe it's a confidence issue. I don't think it's very interesting to listen to me speak, but there's people that come in, regulars here and there, and they seem to really enjoy it. They really like that, and I think that's why they keep coming back. And that makes me think that, like, if you've really got something to say and you know how to conduct yourself and have a structure, or even if it's something simple, like, you know, with your setup on Twitch, where it's you waking up, sort of starting the day, I think that's a very simple, you know, structure, but like a lot of people can relate to that and like that. It's a nice way to, you know, begin your day. If you know that this person's always going to have this setup and it's something you can go to, it's certainly something worth going to, listening to, checking out. I mean, for instance, I was watching Joe Rogan the other day, and you know, there's many people that like and dislike his stuff, but one thing I say about him is he's very consistent. Yeah, every time you watch that podcast, you know what to expect. And I think that's key with this type of streaming. So every time you check out a particular streamer or YouTuber or whatever, you want kind of the same thing each time, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I would hope that those listening to my podcast would kind of enjoy the fact that there's always the same format. Obviously, it's always going to be different. The guest is always different. Conversations are different, but the structure is always the same. You can follow that, and maybe that's what's interesting.
Yeah, you know, now that I think about it, that is kind of the podcasts that I return to are the ones that I know what to expect. Whenever there's ones that like they're always different. I noticed that I don't stick with those. Like, I don't know if you know Jake Hurwitz and Amir Blumenfeld from the internet. They did a series called Jake and Amir, and they basically got a following now that it has stuck with them.
Cool.
But
for them.
Sorry, I can't see your facial expression very well. It's kind of sort of freezing up.
Yes, that would be my wondrous internet, I imagine. Yeah, I do apologize. No, I'm not familiar with that podcast. I don't know it.
Okay. Yeah, but basically they're an advice show, even though they're not experts in anything. And you know, at first I thought it was a stupid concept, but the only reason I come back is because I know there will be bits throughout. I know it'll start with improv and updates on their lives, and I know that eventually they'll end up answering some sort of question about sex. So that's actually a good point, that people do come back to things for the predictability.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think it's one of the reasons I watch professional wrestling, actually, because one of the things you touched on right there is this kind of different things for different members of your audience. You know, when they watch that show, like you said, there's certain things that you come back for, but there's other things that you don't enjoy so much. And it's the same for me when I watch wrestling. You know, there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, okay, this match is done, but then the thing that I really want to see is coming up. And but I remember one person did this analogy of wrestling, and they said it's like a circus. You know, there's something for everything. And I think a lot of things in life, content related, are like that, because you know, your audience is diverse, generally speaking, and they won't all necessarily like the same thing. You know, there's a lot of people that tell me, oh man, your podcasts are too long, and there's other people that are like, oh, you know, that's perfect, I like a longer podcast, blah blah blah. I think it really depends. I mean, I don't plan on the podcasts being long or short. They're as long as they are. It really depends. But when I started doing the clips, that was my way of saying, okay, for people that can't, I was going to say they can't handle the long ones. No, the people that don't want to listen for like 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever, that's for them. Those clips are for them. And I think it's important to do that, to cater to all different parts of your audience. It's one of the reasons why I'm a variety content creator, because, you know, there's a lot of things that I enjoy to do and I would do anyway. But when I've started splitting up my different YouTube channels, I thought of this. It's like, okay, this channel for this stuff, this channel for this stuff, this channel for this stuff. You got to think of your audience to some extent. But
yeah.
So actually, I got one more question, or a couple more questions about your podcast.
Yeah.
Who are your sources of inspiration for podcasting? Because obviously, you know, I've mentioned a few there that I listen to that I like. I think I do model mine a lot after Joe Rogan's. Obviously, his is much more relaxed. It's a bit different. I'm much more, I'd say, a bit more rigid. I don't know. I like to have a bit more of a, I don't mind free flow, but I think it's important to have a very strict kind of thing that you follow, at least, so you don't get lost too much in the tangents. But yeah, who do you look up for inspiration?
So I've got two main ones. One of them is the Bible Project podcast, because even if I don't feel like consuming Bible related content, I know that when I get in there, Tim Mackey's going to have some sort of insight and opinion that I've never heard before. He takes a lot of the typical, I'm gonna say, stigma around the Old Testament in particular. He calls himself a Hebrew Bible scholar. That's his main focus of study. And he sort of turns them on their head by using the original cultural context. And I really like that. I really like his sort of calm and even tone. I like the way that they insert music and sound effect, and sort of, it's very free form. Sometimes they'll get into a bit of poetry, and sometimes they'll just, you know, chat about real life applications of something. And the whole podcast purpose is literally just recording the conversations that they use to make their YouTube videos. So it's just recording their research and their planning. But I also really like that John, the co-host, always has a good audience perspective question. He's always asking like all of the questions that the audience might be asking, and I really like that. And then the other one is so there's this guy, this music creator called Sleeping at Last, and he's got a podcast just about the creation of his different songs. But for a while there, he did a single series where he was making songs about different types on the Enneagram. And his Enneagram series was just so introspective and, empathetic toward the types of people he was talking about. Because obviously, if anybody's not familiar, the Enneagram is it's like a personality test, but it's more like a personality theory. And it's quite ancient, actually. It's kind of a tradition, but he had an expert on, and the format of it was such that you really got to know these different types as he was talking about them, and he always involved people of those types in the music creation process, and I thought that was pretty cool. And just overall, the calm tone and the involvement of music is kind of the connecting thread between these two. I really enjoy podcasts that bring me to a mindful place.
And for your own podcast, what are your goals and aspirations for it?
I just want to get it out there, to be honest. I mean, I would hope people would listen to it. That would be nice. But yeah, I just want to. I want to be able to make it regularly. I really enjoy making it, and hopefully, eventually, I get to actually share it with people.
Do you think that's going to be anytime soon? I mean, you mentioned you got some episodes kind of recorded, so that's obviously half the way there, really. I mean,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the year in review should be out soon, actually. We're still in the process of recording it, because it ended up being more of a 3-part thing. But yeah, once I finish that up, I should be releasing it along with like a little, what do you call it? Like an intro teaser. What does Spotify call it?
Trailer, or yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's the name of the podcast?
So it's called I'm Here Now. It's so funny. We're 59 minutes in. It's called I'm Here Now. Yeah, and I guess the purpose is to pick apart the things that are preventing us from truly being here and truly being present in our lives. And while it's not out, I do have an email list for people who are interested in pre-production updates. I send out like once every couple of months, to be honest, and hopefully I'll be able to let people know when it's actually live.
Excellent. Where will it be sort of available to listen to?
Spotify mainly. I hope to have a webpage up, and hopefully Apple Music. Haven't really sorted all of that out yet, but the hope is anywhere where you find podcasts.
Excellent. Well, best of luck with that. Thanks for sharing. And yeah, let's move it forward. So let's talk about acting. Tell us about your acting experiences so far.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I feel like with a lot of the things that I do, it feels like I have a lot more experience than I do, because I care so much and I work so hard with the small things that I do. But with acting, I knew at 10 years old that I wanted to act, that's what I wanted to do, and that was like my main thing. And I remember being 10 years old and thinking, well, if I'm going to be an actor, I need to go to an acting school. And if I'm going to go to an acting school, I need experience. And so I was like, I'm going to audition for Annie, the small town that I grew up in was putting on Annie like that same year that I decided I wanted to be an actor. So it's kind of perfect timing. But and then I, from that point on, decided that I hated theater. I hated musical theater. I was not interested in theater acting, and so I didn't do anything else. I did like a couple of things in high school, but I was like, nope, over it, not interested. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I had this plan that I was going to turn 18. I'm a very ambitious person.
I'm going to make it to 18. That's my plan.
Yeah, seriously. I was like, well, I can't possibly do anything until 18. So, but I was like, all right, I'm gonna turn 18. I'm gonna move out to LA. I'm gonna live in my car. And I'm gonna do commercials.
Right.
And I'm gonna be an extra in commercials. And then I'm gonna try to have speaking parts as an extra in commercials, and I'll just work my way up from there. And I'm so glad I didn't actually do that. That would have been a living hell. I was like, I'm gonna sleep on the side of the road in the countryside, and I can go to truck stops. Like, I had it all.
Jesus Christ, woman.
I had it all logistically planned out.
You can tell that these are the thoughts of a young kind of no offense, clueless teenager, because it's like,
yes,
so many bad things could happen with that scenario. And it's like, don't get me wrong, we've all had those stupid thoughts where you're like, yeah, I could just do this, there'll be no problems, easy. And it's like, that's not how
we know the limitations and we can easily imagine them, but there's the chance that I'm actually invincible. So let's just roll with that single
I could
chance
actually
right
be God without realizing it, man. It's possible. Oh my God. Wow. Do you know, before I quiz you more on acting, I will say I do agree with your thing about theatre acting. I don't know what it is for me, because I'm an aspiring actor as well. I started doing stuff in the beginning of 2019 and discovered that I loved it. I was like, okay, so this is a thing then. I'm going to pursue this as well. And a lot of people have asked me like, oh, would you do theatre? Do you like theatre? I'm like, no, fuck that. I've seen musicals. I've seen a bit of theatre here and there. I don't understand the fascination. I mean, I kind of understand people that want to do Shakespeare. I get it. But, I mean, I was born and raised in the UK, and I thought that Shakespeare was dull when I was at school. I like the stories, but I always thought it was just a bit too melodramatic, and people are going to curse me for this, but I don't care. It's my opinion. Too dramatic. I know it's drama, it's supposed to be, but there's a line, and I feel like when I watch like something that I really enjoy, like good movie, good TV, the one thing that I always look out for is convincing acting. It's the same thing that I look for in professional wrestling as well. It's like, does this person make me believe that they are this person? Like, for example, I remember this is a funny example, but I think people can agree with me on this. Ashton Kutcher, who did all the like silly what that was, like Domino's pizza commercials in the 90s, and obviously he was famously on what's that show? That 70s show, and then he was on 2.5 Men, blah blah blah. He's always played like the fool, right? That young kind of foolish kind of guy. And then he just, around the time that he was still doing that 70s show, he did this serious movie, The Butterfly Effect. Everyone remembers this movie. And I was just blown away by his performance. I thought he was exceptional. And this is the thing, I totally forgot that it was Ashton Kutcher in that role. I was so enthralled in his character and his conviction, and I was sold on it. And then I was like, that, in my opinion, is what makes a good actor. It's not about how dramatic you can be or the intensity of the role and the story. It's like, no, bullshit. Can you convince me that you are this person? And I think it's possible within theatre, but I feel like there's this kind of barrier almost, because you're purposefully playing to the audience. I mean, even down to the very kind of fact that they like face the audience when they're doing their dialogues, because obviously you're not going to like turn away, but like it almost kind of feels like, hey, give me applause, give me adoration, like give me everything. Like, this is I'm I just don't get it. So I totally agree with you on that. I have zero interest in.
So I love this. I love that you had that entire interjection about how theater sucks, because I grew out of that, and that's actually my thing now. But I'll you know what? I'll explain
Wow.
why.
Okay, cool. That's interesting.
So yeah, I would think that my style of acting is definitely more suited for film, but and Netflix is doing some great things, producing a lot of indie stuff, and I really
Yes.
appreciate that, and I'm really looking forward to where film goes in the future, mainstream film at least. Obviously, people have been making good films for a long time. It's just now they're getting a lot more visibility, more the homegrown stuff. But I so after I actually did graduate before I graduated high school, I remember we did this thing. No, this is a small town that's all about sports, and the academics aren't that great. No offense to anybody from from my hometown that might be listening, but if we had had valedictorian, right, straight A students, we would have had 7 of them in my class of 100. That's too many. Usually there's only one. But
The chosen one.
so it was pretty easy to do well. But
Okay.
we did a little test thing to see what sort of classes we should take. And I was like, well, obviously I want to do performance, but you don't have those here. So, and sure enough, it was like, take choir. And I'm like, how would that help me act? Take choir. But so I was like, cool. There's this thing in the Midwest where, and I'm not sure if it exists elsewhere, but I know it's in the Midwest, where it's called PSEO, Post-Secondary Enrollment Options. And while you're in high school, you can enroll at a local college or university and take classes there to fill your remaining high school credits for free and accumulate college credits for when you graduate. And so I did that solely so that I could take theater classes. That was literally it. I spent all of my study halls just looking at the different course options, and so I wasn't working toward a degree or anything. I took public speaking. I didn't take theater appreciation, oddly enough. Well, not oddly enough, because I still hated theater. Um, and I walked in there. This is I haven't mentioned this yet, but I'm autistic, and this is a classic sort of autistic person thing. But I walked into that theater every single day with just the straightest, most serious face possible. Like everybody else in my class was like, "Yay, acting! This should be fun." It was beginning acting. This should be fun. And like half of them were football players looking for an easy A, and or they just enjoyed the theater director's personality. And I'm over here like acting, taking this seriously, like complete straight face, walk to my corner, do my thing, um, and intimidate my partners just with how serious I was taking it. And I I enjoyed that. I enjoyed some of the monologues I did. I enjoyed the way, he was able to direct us. I enjoyed that. And then he had an old friend of his, who he had mentored, who ended up going to um, Stella Adler in LA, and then moved on to go to the oh shoot, what is it called? It's in Berlin now, but it's still called LISPA, the London International School of Performing Arts. He ended up going there, and that was a big deal. It was like, whoa, this guy's a big deal, and now he's back in the Twin Cities area, and he came back to Rochester to see us, and so he did a workshop, and that kind of was a bit of a turning point for me, because at the time I wasn't quite sure that I still wanted to do acting. And he came and he basically had us do songs as monologues. So like our favorite song, because you already know the script, our favorite song, do that, but as monologue. And he would just stop people right away and tell them exactly what was not selling it for him. And he would keep doing that until they were selling it for him. And then they would go through and he'd be like, good job. And I just thought that was fascinating because I was so used to, you know, the theater world being like, oh, bravo, good job. I'd never seen someone do that before where they were like, no, take it seriously. I can tell you're not taking it seriously. Take it seriously. And so then after I graduated, when I found out that he was actually going to come back, that the theater director there was going to go on sabbatical and he was going to come back and fill in and teach those classes for him, I was like, I got to take those. So I ended up, I had some savings. I paid for the classes. I took them. He directed 2 shows. And the first one was Macbeth. And it absolutely blew me away the way that, first of all, the passion that he had for the piece that he was working with, that he even in areas where he may not have been seeing the same things that other people were seeing, like he was very open to what the actors saw. And so whenever something wasn't, you know, whenever he wasn't sold on something, he'd be like, try this. What do you think you should try? What do you like? He would ask a lot of those questions, and he was very movement focused. I mean, he studied in a physical theater pedagogy. I'll say that. I don't need to go down the road of what that is, what the specific one is, but he was all about minimalism and telling the story with our bodies. And so there wasn't a set. Our costumes were just wearing the black clothes we had in our houses. And there was no makeup. And we didn't put on, oh my gosh, we didn't put on the Queen's English accents to do Shakespeare. Which is too common over here. It's too common.
That's how you do it.
And
It's got to
then
be
people say
authentic.
that's what a British accent is.
It must be authentic. Must be Shakespearean.
Huh? Yes. Must be Shakespearean. Okay. Hopefully I can hear you better now. But yeah, so we didn't put on accents and we didn't put on a performative, like loud and like big and hammy sort of act. He was very much about, don't think about the audience and like, you know, letting them hear you, but don't think about them in terms of them getting the picture. They'll get the picture. And it kind of showed me that a lot of what I hated so much about theater acting is that it's so often oversharing. When you overshare with someone, you share what you're going through in a way that tries to force them to experience it too. And that's exactly what a lot of theater actors do. They play out to the audience and try to like grab them, and they go for shock value. They go for the highest height of emotion, and it ends up just being canned. So to have this person who is dedicated to theater, not to film, not to television, dedicated to theater, who was about playing it real, I was introduced to a side of theater I had never seen before. And the next show he did was called Peer Gynt. It's an Ibsen, but it's not like most of his other things. It's written as a dramatic poem, but it's more like prose, and it's super long. The original production that was staged was 14 hours, so it was 2 hours each night for a week.
Oh, okay.
You had to keep coming back.
Right.
And so it was supposed to immerse you like in the life of Peer Gynt and all of his depravity, so that at the end you would be able to, you know, truly empathize with this awful person. Modern ones do like 4 hours. This particular director did his own cut, that was 75 minutes. So great, perfect. We're off to a good start. And he split Pear into 5 different people at the different stages of his life. And I got to play the second one as a playboy. And that was so fun. And it's really heartbreaking to realize that college is the only time you'll ever get to do those sorts of things, because nobody's going to cast you in like daring roles unless you're a celebrity and they just feel like having a celebrity name. So it's kind of sad. It's like, I'll never get to play anything like that again. But yeah, and that was entirely about ensemble and everybody like moving with the same breath. And there was music. There was lots of music, live music played at the same time. We were playing on the stage. And like you could see us changing costume in the background. He was all about, stop caring about the audience. I'll care about the audience. You stop caring about the audience. And so even when we did Macbeth, we were all sat, whenever we were quote unquote off stage, we were all sat at the edge of the stage. So you could see us at all times. And yeah, with Peer Gynt, there was no set at all. And Peer Gynt is an epic. So he goes to a lot of places and does a lot of things. So it was our bodies that had to convey those environments, and we couldn't do it in a way that made you cringe. And that's the challenge, right? Because when you do stuff like that, if you're trying to play to the audience and not to the text and the truth and like the thing you're doing, it's super hammy and gross. Like, can you tell I'm the ocean yet? And so like, no, a lot of the time the audience didn't know that that was the ocean, but the story was still told. You still knew that they were on a boat. You didn't know that that guy over there was part of the ocean, but you could tell they were on a boat. And so that was a lot of it. I got to do a lot of sort of sound effects on the violin. That was very fun. And everybody was constantly on stage doing things, obviously, because they had to make the environments and everything. And yeah, I think that show kind of changed my life, to be honest, because that was kind of the first time that I was ever mentally healthy. And I went in there every single day being like, I love this show. I love this cast. I love this play. And I'd never experienced that before. And it kind of makes me sad because it kind of feels like I peaked in college, and that's literally a trope. But it taught me a lot. And so imagine my joy when I then discovered that Minneapolis has the biggest fringe theater scene in the US. Like, so yeah, sure. And that's why, like, there are a lot of people who even live here and don't know it, because the theater scene itself kind of feeds itself. And so, you know, people know about the Guthrie, so the main theater in the Twin Cities, but they don't know about the fringe stuff as much, even though there's a theater on every block. So it's kind of a weird culture.
Awesome. Well, so yeah, you've told us about sort of your beginnings in acting, but what are you doing in acting now, or what did you do most recently? Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so it's tough. Obviously, COVID has kind of put a lot of stuff on hold. And you've noticed now, there's no way that I could do a Zoom performance, which is a thing. That's totally a thing right now, Zoom performances, and I don't know who's watching them, but good for them. Good.
Wow.
Like, good for them that they're able to be engaged in that. So obviously I would not have been able to do a Zoom performance with all of the interruptions, having my family at home at all times. It just would not have worked. So I haven't done anything since October of 2019.
Okay.
And that was a show called The Penelopeid. So it's about the character Penelope, and it's the Odyssey through her perspective.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, And it was done by a women's theater company, which I had previously thought that things like that were kind of extra, that they were overcompensating, that they were moving in the wrong direction to be like, we only tell women's stories. But now that I've done it, I can see how having anybody in there who was not socialized female would have completely changed the presentation of it. So the play itself is it focuses mostly on Penelope and the maids, because in the story 12 maids died for pretty much no reason. I'm actually blanking on it a little bit. My memory's not great, but I was passionate, I promise. Yeah, and so that was another one of those more experimental things. It felt a little bit more mainstream than I was used to be honest, because we had like props and set pieces and costumes that were, I guess the maids' costumes were minimalist and they weren't like period based or anything. But yeah, that felt very powerful. I think even my dad was affected a bit by it, which you can probably imagine. He's a pretty, stony faced person. His feelings are kept very, very far back there. And maybe it's just because he was watching his daughter die again on stage. I don't know. But yeah, that's the last thing I did. And then before that was another Greek play, another modern twist on a Greek play, which was Eurydice. And for that, I did mostly music. So most of the stuff that I've done lately has been ensemble based. So I was just an ensemble member. And then whenever I wasn't in the ensemble, I was making music. And I really enjoy doing that. I love being able to create sounds to lay under the actors and being able to play with them, because it's so different from having composed pieces, because the actors aren't playing to you, you're playing to them. And
so
it's
you're like a live performer in like a mini kind of orchestra that's sort of present there. Is that right?
It's more like, this is hard to explain. So in these shows, in these ensemble-based shows, every actor plays, multiple characters as they're needed, multiple background people, and then kind of like a musical, but I would hope a little bit less cheesy, in my opinion. And then each of those people will sometimes, I guess I've never seen this aside from the stuff that I've done, but I've done it 4 times now. So in all of these shows I've done, some of those ensemble people will play those different characters, and then they'll also be musicians. And so whenever there's a bit of music that they play in, they go off to wherever the musicians typically stand in that particular production, and they play. Sometimes they'll play like as actors, sometimes they'll, and so the music just kind of comes in at different parts.
Right. Yeah.
In Peer Gynt, there was a kick drum heartbeat every time a pair transitioned into a different pair. And so whoever was nearest to the drum kit was going to do the kick drum heartbeat. And whenever there was like the ocean, I was back there doing violin, sort of like moving tremolo for the wind and stuff. But yeah, that kind of thing. So sound effects, underscore, that sort of thing.
And so it sounds like you're mainly doing theatre acting for the most part. You mentioned years ago, you wanted to kind of get involved with film stuff, commercials, that sort of stuff. Have you been doing that as well on the side, or is your focus mainly just on theatre and pursuing that particular avenue?
Yeah, I tell you what, I really would love to. I would love to do film. And it's still definitely a dream.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm kind of noticing that in order to make money doing film, there's no fringe film scene. Like, unless it's going to be an award-winning short film, there's not really the same amount of that out there that you can do and be paid.
So that's more what you're
And
interested in, is the independent films as opposed to the major ones.
yeah. Well, and even if I was interested in major films, that just makes it that much harder to be employed, you know?
I don't know. I
Like
mean,
the pool of
it depends though, doesn't it? Because like lots of different people make it. You know, obviously it's one of the
yeah,
hardest professions to make it in, but you know, different things can count towards you. You know, like obviously we hear about, you know, if you're really good looking, then that helps, and you know, if you've got a particularly distinctive voice or look or whatever, that helps too. Um, but you know, like I think if nothing else, over the past couple of decades, we've kind of been seeing lots and lots of more people, you know, doing really well that, you know, maybe don't suit that kind of like, or fit that kind of typical like Hollywood image, so to speak. And
yeah,
also does seem to be more of an emergence in popularity of independent films and European cinema and so on. It's becoming more and more, I suppose, accessible than compared to previous
yeah.
decades.
Oh, absolutely. I have a lot more hope now than I did before.
Mm,
Um, because I'm noticing that a lot of the people who really get to do the most interesting stuff are the people with those unique traits. I think of Jamila Jamil. I got
mm,
it all mixed up. Or like Rami Malek. And just talking about being of Egyptian heritage and being able to play lead roles is kind of a first, unfortunately, but it's a good step. And so there's a lot of that happening. People are rally. I don't know if you know about the Sia music drama, her film. It's about um, an autistic girl,
mm-hmm.
and I'm assuming music is her special interest. I'm assuming that's it, that music makes her tick. But I don't really know the plot. I just know that they were like, we're going to be progressive, we're going to be forward thinking, we're going to hire an actress who is autistic, who
Mm.
is on the spectrum. And they did find someone, but their filming schedule did not accommodate her autism. It was too much. And instead of going through the work and allocating the resources to accommodate her, even just to be on set as a consultant, they went with Maddie Ziegler, the dancer,
Mm.
not autistic. And so a lot of people are upset about that. And
Mm.
I'm just excited that it's mainstream enough that people are upset that aren't in the community. Like um that gives me hope as well, because I'm realizing lately I kind of can't do things professionally without disclosing. There are
Right.
just too many things that, you know, turn people off, um, that I can't I can't hide anymore. I tried for a really long time, and before I really knew what was going on, I just kind of struggled and I didn't really know why. And now I kind of recognize that, like, in the audition room, I can tend to make people uncomfortable because I'm something they haven't seen before. Obviously, here I'm able to put on, you know, I can mask here, but when you're making art, you really kind of do have to have it's a very vulnerable thing. And if you're vulnerable as an invisibly disabled person, it can become quite visible. Um, and so I think, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the future
Well,
holds.
give us some
To answer your
examples.
question,
Obviously, if you're willing to talk about it, like
of course.
because you know I've had many friends over the years who've had different degrees of autism. So I have like a rough idea, but I'm not like an expert either. You say that you mask it. You say that you've, or in the past you've tried to hide it. So obviously, I gather from what you've said and what you explained there that obviously when you're going through the intense emotions and trying to draw that out and trying to act, basically, that's when it comes out. That's when it's sort of exposed. So what exactly is exposed? What behavior that people are uncomfortable with is coming out?
I wish I knew. I have some guesses, but
Okay. Is it stuff that
I
you're
just
consciously aware of, or is it something that other people were telling you, like, hey, that was weird, why did you do that? Like,
a bit of both. Although nobody's like, hey, that was weird, why did you do that? It's more like just the way, that they bring up what I did. It's kind of like, yeah, and what was that? More or less.
and
But
in these instances, did they know that you were autistic?
no, because I didn't know.
Oh, so this is something you found out recently then?
Yeah.
Recently. Okay, how long ago did you find out then?
July.
Holy shit. Okay, so we're talking very recent there. I was thinking this is like a couple of years. Okay, right.
No.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I've kind of known for a couple of years, but I didn't get a formal diagnosis until July. So I didn't really let myself sort of make sense of anything yet. I kind of was just like, oh, that looks like that. Oh, that also looks like that. All
What were
those
the
things kind
signs
of look
though?
like that.
Like what things made you think, hang on, something's not quite right?
I mean, I've always known something is not quite right. Like since I was little, and my parents have too. And I think when I was diagnosed with ADHD, they kind of lumped everything into that little box and went, okay, well, you're on medication. That's the way we're treating it. So take your meds and maybe this stuff will go away. Um, Obviously it didn't. But I found that people on the spectrum can either be extremely good at masking and at being numb just in general, like their brains have a bit of a superpower in that regard, or they can be abnormally bad at masking and being numb. And I noticed that a lot of society looks at people who are bad at it and go, wow, they're under socialized. But it's just genuinely they lack that ability to mask, because we're always masking. Whenever we meet someone, we figure out what they kind of expect and we try to give that back to them. But yeah,
See, I just hold on 1 second. So
yeah.
are you saying like autistic people in general purposefully do this in order to adapt to the person they're speaking with?
Oh yeah, like you do it automatically. There's no way you would probably be conscious of it. People mirror each other, but
Oh yeah, no,
autistic
I know
people,
that happens, but obviously like the
yeah,
way that you're putting it kind of makes it sound like you're trying to cater
evolve.
yourself for that other person. Okay, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's almost like implying that like being autistic is wrong, therefore you've got to like kind of put on a show for the other person so that they feel comfortable.
And that's that can be how it comes off at first. I'm learning as time goes on that that's not necessarily the case, that it's not wrong, and that nobody's thinking that it's wrong, but you still have to kind of do it in order to get your ideas across and in order to connect. Because how do I put this? I think, yeah, we do it automatically. I think for a lot of autistic people, it's a more involved process. That's why a lot of therapies are about teaching you how to mirror expressions, teaching you how to smile when you're happy, all those sorts of things. Um, Teaching you, you know, to shake somebody's hand and to, because it's just not going to come automatically. Um, and I think in different cultural environments, we as humans we adapt, and I think because autistic people struggle to do that naturally, there is a lot of effort put into it very often, which is, I think, why I'm all about acting, because I'm doing it 24/7. I remember in high school, one of my friends said, "Oh, but you're such a good actress," and I'm like, I've literally never acted though. Like, you've never seen me act. I've never seen me act. She's like, "Yeah, but you're kind of always doing it," and I was like, I don't know why, but that seems very true. Um, and I think that can be why, uh, if there's a stereotype that autistic people are absent, but then the more different people you get to know, you can kind of see, like, I don't know, this person seems hyper present, and that can also be the case. And I think part of that is being unintentionally, uncontrollably self-absorbed. There is kind of this wall. It's not a big scary wall like how Autism Speaks wants you to see it, but there is kind of a wall. And I think, oh gosh, I forgot what I was getting at. Something masking. Oh, hyper present. Yeah. I think in learning how to present themselves in a way people understand, more hyper present people can tend to exaggerate some things, because they can't tell when you get it. I can't tell when you get it, and so I've got kind of a unique sort of accent. People have told me, and all of my mannerisms are kind of precise. There's just a lot of overcompensating happening, but yeah, in the audition room, it doesn't really come out when I'm acting. It doesn't. I don't think so. I think maybe some of the choices I make might be a little off sometimes if I don't have guidance, but I think it's just in between, when I'm like, I'm all vulnerable now. Like, I just got done being somebody else, and now I'm myself, and that's very bare. And it's hard to switch from being one character as honestly as possible to being a version of yourself as honestly as possible without revealing too much. And I found that in myself, whenever I express, it's extremely raw. I'm either all in or I'm not in at all. And so when I do things artistically, they just don't get perceived the way I intend them to be. I don't really know what happens, to be honest. Yeah.
How do you, because you mentioned there, that friends have identified that you're always kind of like acting, and you mentioned that you have to really make a conscious effort to recognize, okay, I need to sort of display this behavior because this is appropriate for this feeling or this emotion or blah blah blah. So how do you transition from playing a part to, in a way, kind of playing another part by being because to me it kind of sounds like almost the acting never stops, which is kind of a scary thing to think about. And obviously, right, and like I often think there's like a sense of, when you're yourself, it's a safe place. When like we all know, like when we're with people that we're comfortable with, we can just be ourselves. You don't have to put anything else on. You don't have to worry about their judgment, blah, blah, blah. You can just be yourself. But to me, from listening to you, I get the sort of sense that like there isn't that comfort zone. Safe maybe for like obviously your home with your close relatives and stuff. But when you're out and about, it almost sounds like you can't. So like, talk to us a little bit about that. Like I'm struggling with that a little bit.
Yeah. No, yeah, you really can't. Sometimes I'll try to relax. But I don't know. It just seems kind of impossible. That's why it's very important for me and a lot of people on the spectrum to have genuine alone time, because that's the only way to recharge, is to be genuinely alone. Because like when I'm in my natural place, I don't make a lot of facial expressions. My inflection is like kind of not existent. Even my parents, if I'm, kind of focusing on something and I walk downstairs and they ask me a question, I'm going to answer it and it's going to come off really irritable and like, it's going to have a lot of undertones that I obviously didn't put there, just because it's very flat. And, I'm somebody who's, masking comes very naturally to me. And yet I still even struggle with having a flat tone and having a straight face, a lot of the time when I'm around people I'm comfortable with. But yeah, no, it doesn't stop. Even with my best friend in the whole wide world, it doesn't stop. My partner, we've been together for 6 years, going on 7. So with him, it's a bit different, but we've been long distance for 5 years. So, whenever I'm around him, it's kind of weird because I haven't been in a really long time. But yeah, around him I can be myself. But I've read in a lot of autistic subreddits, people whose partners don't understand, and that sounds horrifying to me, because being with your partner is supposed to be just as relaxing as being alone. And if you just never get that, especially like right now in quarantine, if you're in a small apartment, I can't imagine it.
I kind of can't imagine. Okay, if you're an autistic person and you're with someone, I would presume quite early on there's going to be that conversation like, hey, here's something you should know. This is, and because it's important, because if, the other person needs to know how to read you. Do you know what I mean? Because like, it's such an important element of a relationship, being able to read if someone's sad, angry, happy, whatever. Because obviously, as you've outlined through in this discussion, like you've sort of said, like, it's a bit off. There's, you're not always able to convey that necessarily. It's difficult. And so to hear that there are relationships where the other person is not supportive in that sense is kind of, it is terrifying, and it's pretty messed up. Like, I don't understand why you would be in a relationship if you've kind of got that attitude and that mindset. I mean, I know how this will sound, but I'm just being honest. The friends that I've had over the years, like I had a best friend when I was a kid who had autism. And to be honest with you, for a long time, I didn't know. Like, my mum explained it to me and I didn't really get it until one day something happened. Basically, he actually introduced me to professional wrestling, so I owe that to him. He's a good guy. But yeah, we were sitting watching this film. Because we would play games together, play football, watch stuff together, blah blah blah. And he brought over this video, and it was like one of his favorites or something. And he had to go, I think, or I don't know, something like that. And we couldn't get the video. This is how long ago this was. So it was a VHS player, and it was a VHS cassette. Okay, so yes, I'm old. And we couldn't get it out. It was jammed. And he started losing it. Like, really, how can I put this? It wasn't like necessarily like anger. It was more like extreme frustration. And I really didn't know what to do, because we were kids. We were like 9, 10, do you know what I mean? And you don't really know how to like process that as a kid.
With a friend.
Yeah, and I remember saying like, "Hey, it's gonna be okay. Like, we'll get it out. Like, don't worry," kind of thing. But that doesn't work. Then I remember my mum came in and she basically completely destroyed my video cassette player with like a hammer, like, I don't know, whatever. Broke it apart just to get this videotape out, and he got it back. And I was just sitting there watching this like, oh, this is interesting. I wasn't upset. I was just like, okay. And she like calmly said to me like, I'm so sorry, like we'll get this replayed. And in the end, I think I got like a DVD player a month later or something. But she had to explain what had happened and why she needed to do that. Like it was important for him. And then I remember another time I was around his house and a similar thing happened. Like we were just playing the game, and again, he lost it, and I didn't really understand why. And then I was sort of told throughout the course of our friendship about, you know, other experiences he had where, when I wasn't around, where he would just kind of get like sickness, sometimes, where it would just kind of come out of nowhere. And I guess it was kind of like sensory overload, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my first experience of a friend that had that. And then years later, I worked with a guy who had, I think he had Asperger's, or it was like mid-level autism. I don't know how to put it, you know, because I think I'm glad that there exists this term spectrum. I think that's a very accurate way of putting it.
Yeah.
Some people, you know, it's very severe. Some people, it's kind of acute. I think it really depends on the person. And
Mm-hmm.
this friend that I had, is interesting, people's reactions, because there were people that introduced me to him who were assholes, and were like, oh yeah, you know, this guy is, I can't say the words, but you know, use your imagination. And I met him and came across as a pretty intelligent guy to me. Very easy to work with, nice guy. When he would have like a situation, it only happened like a few times, you know. It was like I remember his best friend worked there, and he was like the only person who actually knew how to handle the situation. And the funny thing was, it wouldn't even take that much. All you need to do is be compassionate and calm. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like there were managers, like, okay, we worked on a supermarket, right? And it's a, you know, crazy, you know, loud, everything going on, stressful situation. And in that scenario, when something goes wrong, it's fine. But obviously for a guy suffering from autism, it's like, no, it's not fine. And I think he had the thing where it's like he had to have organization, order, control of the situation. So when he didn't feel like he had that, that's what triggered it for him. And his best friend knew how to deal with it. And, you know, it would be anything from just calmly taking him to one side, talking to him for like 10, 15 minutes, then it's okay. Or just completely remove it, walking away from the situation, coming back to it. But to bring the point I'm trying to make here is that level of compassion that you need, and the calmness and all of that, that's what I think a lot of people are missing, especially when they approach people with autism, because there's a lot of assholes out there that just don't care or don't know, and they're just like, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you acting
Yeah,
normal?
keep your shit to yourself, mate.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, it's not even about autism. It's just in general, like anyone you deal with in life who's dealing with something, right? Be it they're sad, they've got depression, they've got autism, any kind of situation where you need to show empathy. Lots of people don't know how to show empathy.
They're very keep to yourself, and if somebody else is making them uncomfortable, it's like to them, instead of it being their responsibility by proximity to show empathy, they take it like, wow, you're kind of messing up your whole duty and keeping your shit to yourself. Like,
Yeah, you're so right on this. Like it really, that's one thing I learned as I started to become an adult that's really fucked up about life, is that there's this weird expectation from a lot of people as you say, to keep your shit together. It's almost like, I remember seeing it at school for the first time. I remember certain teachers would be like this, and I saw it in workplaces, and it's like, it's really fucked up. And it extends to everything. You know, if someone is having a bad day, we all have bad days, right? You know, your girlfriend dumps you, you get fired, someone dies, you know, all sorts of shit happens. And it's really interesting, the people around you and their reactions. You can really kind of weed out, okay, who's a normal human being from, okay, who's a piece of shit? And I hate to put it in those terms, but that is really the only way you can put it, because so many people lack empathy. And for many, it's like, not my problem, keep me away from it. Other people, they don't know how to deal with the situation. And it really doesn't take much more than just patience, empathy, and just being calm, relaxed, you know, like I had to, I mean, I'm not proud of this. Years ago, I wouldn't really get, it's not that I was an asshole, but like, I didn't know how to properly show empathy. I used to get empathy and sympathy confused. Okay, so I used to think that, like, in that scenario, you're supposed to give people advice and be like, you need to do this, you should try that. And no, that's the wrong thing to do.
It's like, I understand, when you still don't.
Yeah, no, the best thing you can do when someone is upset or going through some shit is shut up, sit down, and just be there. Just be there. And let the person guide you. They'll tell you. They'll probably start talking. If they don't, ask them a couple of questions, gauge, see, do they want to talk? Do they not want to talk? And listen.
And even, and there's so many people who have good intentions that, like, they'll be like, is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything you need from me? And when you're in the throes of something hard, the last thing you're going to be able to do is tell someone else what they can do to make it better. And so instead of like sitting down and waiting until you can tell them, you're like, okay, well, let me know if there's anything I can do. And they leave. And they go, didn't know what I could do. If there was nothing I could do. And it's like, you can just be there.
You got to use your brain.
But
it's like,
yeah.
I remember one time working in a hotel, right? And there was this girl. Okay, we were all university students. I think she was in the same year as me. I can't remember what the scenario was, but we were sitting in the cafeteria and she was upset about something. And I could tell because, you know, not an idiot. And I was like, what's wrong? And she did that thing where someone does, where they're trying to really desperately hold it in. And she started crying a little bit. And people were being jerks, being assholes in the canteen, like, "Ooh, what's wrong with her?" And I didn't say anything. I just got up and I said, "Come with me." And we just walked out. We walked through the back entrance of the place, walked quite far away, somewhere else around the hotel. And we just started talking. I said, "Talk to me." You know, I didn't say anything else. I just like, talk to me. And she started telling me what was wrong, you know, hugs, blah, 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 whatever is necessary. And that's what most people want is just to feel comfortable. I mean, and if they don't want to talk, again, use your brain. If you're already indoors, let's say like you live together, for example, right? Make some tea. Make some food. Do something to make the atmosphere nicer. Like, there's so many things you can do. And I think most people overthink it. But yeah, you're right. They do that thing where I think it's kind of jerky. It's that whole thing of, oh, well, you know, if there's anything I can do, let me know. I'm just going to pop off. And it's like, okay, I guess in their mind, they've kind of like, okay, that's a tick mark, check the box. I did my moral duty. I'm absolved. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. If you
I think that sometimes it does come from anxiety and just genuinely not knowing what to do. And feeling like you need to, because some people feel so much empathy just automatically. that they themselves are now having a hard enough time that they need to leave the situation.
That's different though. That's different.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going through your own shit and you're in, because the thing is, being an empath, that sucks a lot of energy out of you. I don't know that I'm an empath. I think I might be. I've definitely recognized that if I'm empathetic towards someone, it's essentially I'm giving over my energy. So
Yeah.
I know how this is going to sound, but I'm just being honest. You have to look at the situation and go, am I prepared to give over my energy to this person and be there? Because this could be an hour, this could be 5 hours, it could last a long time. And you've got to look at that. The thing is, you don't have to always be like the quote unquote hero. You don't have to be. A lot of people make that mistake and think they have to be there for everyone. You don't. You're not always the right person to be there. But if you are going to be there for someone, then you've got to be there for as long as that takes. And you can't be half-assed about it. You can't, just do it for a little bit, then leave. You've got to be there. And that's why I get it. Like, I've heard over the years, like, so many people talk about what they want in a relationship. And one of the things they say is empathy. And that's what they're looking for. They're looking for that person that will be there when they feel that way and will just not leave. As sad as that sounds, but yeah. Create the safe place. But yeah, I think you're right though, like about the anxiety thing. I think it takes time. I remember, as much as I'm hard on people for not being empathetic enough, I can recognize that I wasn't always, I remember years ago girls telling me like, you're not empathetic, you're not this, you're not that. And it took time to realize what that means. It took education, life experience. So I guess it doesn't come naturally to everyone. Not everyone gets it straight away. But I think to a certain degree, it comes down to not being selfish. I think there was a time in my life when I was quite selfish, and I think that's a key proponent of it. You've to be a truly empathetic person, you need to kind of be able to look past yourself and your needs and what you want and really be there for that person. It pretty much means you need to put yourself aside for an indeterminate period of time.
True humility. Yeah. True humility. That reminds me of like the pride shame sort of dichotomy, that some people it is because of anxiety, they're experiencing a lot of shame. Some people it is assholery, they're experiencing a lot of pride. And the only cure to either of those is true humility and being able to recognize that none of it matters. None of it matters right now. All that matters is just being there.
Absolutely. Let's move it forward. We went on so many tangents there. But yeah, no, thank you. I just want to say, but thank you very much for sharing that, by the way. I know that might not be an easy thing to talk about. But I'm sure our listeners will really appreciate that, particularly if there are any listeners who struggle with autism or who have friends who struggle with it. So thank you very much for that. Moving it forward, yeah, I mentioned in the beginning of all of this that you are an artist. I just wanted to understand fully, though. Are you an artist or are you just like a fan of art? What's your connection to art?
Yeah, I can't be a fan of art because I know that if I'm not participating in it, it's boring. But I
interesting.
Yeah. Well, I just discovered that really recently. Anytime I'm enjoying like a bit of music or something, it's either because I want to learn it, or I'm able to dance to it, or I'm like working to it, or it's like fitting the soundtrack of my life at that time. or like I want to use it in something, but it's never just like I can appreciate what they did here. So I noticed that my partner is a huge fan of art, and he is a huge supporter of a lot of artists, and he loves to look at what people have done, and that's great. And I'm just now realizing I can't do that. I have to participate in some way. So listening to the violin is not going to help me be motivated to practice violin. Practicing violin will motivate me to practice violin. But I have a hard time also calling myself an artist, because I don't do very much publicly. In fact, I don't do very much privately either, but all of what I do is art. It's just I don't feel as though I do very much. Like even with Twitch, I can't stand to do a stream without having some sort of like particular vibe, without, you know, creating sort of a visual landscape that brings people into my space, because I think my space is kind of unique. I've sort of if you believe in sensing energies and stuff, I've put a lot of work into having a very peaceful and positive energy in here. And so anytime I enter my room, I'm like, and so I want to be able to share that with other people. And like when I do streams and stuff, I'm always I don't know how to put it, honestly, but the way that I live and see the world is kind of through art. Like people say art imitates life, but for me it's the other way around. And I think part of that is the only way I'm able to understand the world is through art, to be honest. And I think that's kind of an autism thing, because this is gonna be difficult to grasp, but I legitimately have a lot of difficulty understanding bodies and faces. Like right now, that's the thing I'm struggling with, is bodies and faces, and that humans exist. Like people are, it's as simple as look at a face and go, oh, that's a good face. But for me, it's like, why is it the way that it is? Why are our bodies this way? And so when I'm able to look at a very honest painting that doesn't romanticize anything, but is very beautiful, I'm able to contextualize the beauty of our bodies and them being the way that they are. When I'm struggling with society and the fact that we live in cities, and that electricity is a thing, I can listen to some 30s jazz and see the lights in the streets and in my head, and sort of the city and all of the life that the city holds, and recognize that humans are unique in that way, that the world we have created is very different from the world that was here before us, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I know there are a lot of objectively bad consequences of it, but it's not necessarily all bad.
It's interesting stuff. I don't know how to follow that exactly. It's I kind of know what you mean to some extent.
It's difficult. Like when I'm truly present, it's like I'm in a movie.
I know that feeling.
Yeah.
I do know that feeling. I remember trying to explain this to someone once about the way that I see the world, and I just couldn't. It was very difficult to explain this particular point, because they kept saying, is it this, and I was like, no. And the closest thing I can compare it to is the feeling that you get when you listen to certain music, or it's always a feeling, I can say that much. Or like when you watch a particular movie and the way it makes you feel. And like sometimes I look at life, and this is something that's happened in recent years, where it feels like a movie. Like you watch maybe on a summer's day and you see a particular scene, and that feels like a movie, or you're with someone you love and that moment feels moments. That's something that's changed. I didn't used to be as present about moments before. Now it's like every moment is like, a moment. It's like a big deal. It's like something to live in, something to be cherished. And I'm more kind of... Go on.
If you're familiar with Perks of Being a Wallflower, the feeling of being infinite, I feel describes it pretty well.
What do you mean exactly?
The protagonist has this, climax of being alive, where he's riding in a car and he's got his torso out of the sunroof, and they're riding through a tunnel, and he feels the wind in his hair, and it's like in that moment he feels infinite. And so he kind of creates this term for whenever he or his friend group are feeling particularly alive, they're like, I feel infinite, or I am infinite. And I kind of held on to that because, yeah.
I remember one time I was swimming in the sea, in the ocean in Santa Monica Beach, and I felt that way. That was like that feeling of infinite. I think it's like freedom, isn't it? It's like when you're not thinking about anything else other than that particular moment and the experience and how it makes you feel. And you're just, like, for instance, a lot of people don't understand the concept of mindfulness and stuff. And I think a lot of it comes down to like focusing on things, like with meditation, it's like focusing on things you don't normally focus on. How does this feel? What images come to mind? Like a lot of people I find one, they don't spend enough time on their own, which is very important. Number two, is kind of this thing of like being able to be alone in silence and thinking about what comes to your mind in those moments. Like there's different ways to access this. For me, I find it when I go and be out in nature and have walks and stuff. Sometimes I don't think about anything. I just walk and focus on what comes to my mind. And that for me works, but everyone else has a different way of approaching it. But I feel like a lot of us aren't doing that. It's like, that's why like distractions are called distractions. It's like distraction from what's really important. And I feel like a lot of the things that we spend most of our time on in life are actually distractions. So like work is a distraction from what's really important. Now that obviously depends, because your work could serve you. Like what I'm doing right now, like I'm not earning money from it, but I do hope to one day earn money from it, because I feel like it brings me closer to excuse me, like that understanding that I'm trying to reach in life. I don't know if you want to call it like enlightenment, but like something like that. Whereas the jobs that I had in the past, working in a supermarket, working for some corporate company, whatever, that doesn't feel like it serves any purpose. It's just, this gives me money, but this is pointless. This is a waste of time, energy, everything. We all have to do it, but we do at least have that choice of where we direct our energy and what we direct it towards. It's always a choice. Do I choose to read? Do I choose not to read? Do I choose to just get drunk and do drugs and waste my energy that way? Or don't get me wrong, I'm not judging anyone here. I'm just saying that it's like, it's always a choice. It always comes down to like how we choose to spend our time and our individual understandings of escapism. Everyone has a different idea. For me, art is a form of escapism, but it's also a form of like understanding. It's like tapping into the things that, we don't normally tap into, but maybe it's healthy to tap into.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it would do me well to use art as an escape as well, because I often avoid it since it's my, like, it's how I sober myself, and it's how I like actually bring myself back to earth. So if I'm being avoidant, that's the last thing I want to consume.
How has COVID-19 affected your life? Like, I've asked quite a few of my guests this question, and I suppose a lot of the time I'm just trying to gauge, you know, how they've changed certain things, adapted to it, blah, blah, blah. But I'm particularly intrigued with regards to yourself, because I wonder, like, is that a big deal for someone who, you know, suffers from autism? Does it make a big change, or does it not make any difference? Like, how has it been for you?
I think it's important. I'm gonna let the dog out very quick.
No, don't let the dog go. We like the dog. The dog growls.
He was trying to eat stuff off the floor.
Yeah, dog's got to go.
But
Dog's got to go. I get it.
yeah.
That's a shame, though.
Um,
I like
so
that
yeah,
every time I was trying to
that was
focus
our
on
final
the point, like the dog would pop its head up and just see like, what's going on, and my heart melts when I see that.
I'm happy to hear. Yeah, so I guess it's important. It's important to note, because I didn't say this earlier, and I kind of feel like I feel a bit of a responsibility to educate, and so I need an aside. But yes, as we kind of brushed on earlier, everybody is different. And when you think of spectrum, you kind of, at least I tend to think of like a straight line. And it's more like, you know, those personality graphs where they plot you somewhere in 4 quadrants, and then like maybe they might split it again, or like split it in half again. It's like that, where the very center dot is the normal range of human experience and difficulty in each category. And if you're anywhere beyond that, then you qualify for a diagnosis of like the individual condition in that category. But if your sort of little graph has dots in every single category, you qualify for a diagnosis of autism. And not every single category of difficulty ever. These are very specific like traits. But if you have dots in every single category, they don't necessarily grow linearly, since everybody's experience is different. Someone like me hears all of the things that other people might be able to see, and all of the things that people can't see. Mine would be like just a little bit into the visible, and then a big bit into the invisible. And you can say the same thing the other way around. There are a lot of people, like somebody can be completely nonverbal and very sharp in other ways. Although I think a good portion of nonverbal people, I think that statistic is contributed to by the accompanying intellectual disability that often comes with autism, and it's a whole different tangent. But yeah, so anyway, how have I been affected? I think a lot of my friends have been affected differently than me. Some individuals would consider to be higher functioning really enjoy the isolation. They're like, yes, finally. I'm personally an extrovert, so I've really kind of struggled as far as seeing the right people goes, and then having family at home all the time is difficult. I was actually for the year prior to COVID, I was already kind of isolated. I was going through a year of transition, so to kind of just start getting out again and then have it hit has been really difficult. And then on top of that, I live with my family, and my mom is extra vulnerable, and we just decided we are not getting COVID. My parents, I might have gotten a bit of my numbing abilities from them, because anything that you think should not be humanly sustainable is like totally an option for them. Like, we have not left our house. Well, we went camping for a week in August. But other than that, my mom has not left either the house or the car since March. And I am kind of similar. I've seen friends probably twice. I went to sit outside with them, and then I went up to see my partner, and then after the summer ended, just been indoors the whole time. So even though the US is kind of in a lack of a lockdown situation, we've very much been on lockdown in this house. And so that's been kind of weird, because I really can't escape. Now I've got a pair of ice skates, so I'm excited because I'm gonna drive myself and I'm gonna be alone. But I personally have not been affected nearly as much, and in fact, more than anything, I've been forced to reconcile my relationships with my family members, which is really good, because we've lived together for quite some time, and yet there's a lot of conflict that can be swept under the rug.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, though. That's really good to hear, because I mean, there's a lot of people saying like, "Oh no, it's causing problems with families, been stuck with them." But it's refreshing to hear someone going, "Hey, no, we sorted our problems. It's good."
Yeah, at least I hope so. Unless my dad's just like getting extra good at bottling with more practice.
You couldn't in that scenario. That's, do you know what I mean? Every single day, you'd have to. Absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing I want to ask you about, if you're comfortable, obviously talking about it, is this long distance relationship you're in. Now, there's a lot of people who think this, and myself included, that long distance relationships can't work. I'm not saying no one has ever not made it work. I know of people that have, but it's undeniable that not being physically around the person that you love is a strain on the relationship. Yeah, it's a strain in the relationship. And
you're very much in a relationship with the idea of them the moment they leave your presence. You're no longer in a relationship with the real them. It is now the idea of them. And if that idea of them is not just as flawed as they are in the same areas, you're going to run into major problems.
See, that's a really interesting way you've put it that I don't think I've ever heard before. That's a really good way to put it, the idea of someone. And it's true. I mean, there's a lot of people that do long distance relationships. Obviously, we were talking about I was talking about professional wrestling. There's a lot of couples that make it work. And obviously, wrestlers have to spend a lot of time on the road, so they don't see their partners. But how do you make it work? Like, are there any secrets? Are there things that you guys do differently? I mean, you mentioned that you were sort of physically together for like 2 years and then 5 years distantly. Like, how does that work? Like, how do you make that possible? You know what I mean? And how have you not, like, if you forgive me for saying this, but how have you not like strayed away, but both of you, like, not strayed away? I mean, obviously it depends how much you see each other every year, but so yeah, talk us through that. How are you making this work?
So I should also clarify, we're not technically all that long distance, but we are very much long distance in practice, because we haven't been going out of our way to visit each other unless there's just been a really long period of time. Like during COVID is the first time where it's like, we have no reason to visit, but you're going to come down here for Christmas. You're going to quarantine for 2 weeks beforehand, test yourself, and you're going to come down here for Christmas and stay a couple days. But yeah, are there any secrets? You know, it's just kind of worked out. So when we met, I was not interested in a romantic relationship of any kind. Truthfully, I didn't know that romance was a thing. I thought that it just meant sex and like sexuality. And I'm asexual, so I was like, why would I do that? But then I met Caleb, and it was like my immediate thought was, yeah, this one. This is it. This is, yep.
Brilliant.
Which the funny little male female difference there is that those were my active thoughts, and his thoughts were non-existent, but his feelings were like, I want to spend more time with this person. Like, it was the exact same thing, but for him it was not a conscious, like, he wasn't making prom plans in his brain because we were in high school at the time. But yeah, even when we were in school and we weren't long distance, we weren't together all of the time. We had a couple of regular like weekly sort of things that we would go to together, but we kind of set out quite a few boundaries early on because of, you know, the relationships our peers had been in. We did not want to go through the same pain that a lot of people go through when they're still in school and in relationships. Your brain's not quite there yet. So we were like, we're not going to visit each other unless there's a reason for it. And now the reason is literally maintaining our relationship. Like, it's like, I need to see you. I miss you too much. This is not possible. You got to come here.
But why do you choose, like, to forget about COVID for a minute. So you consciously chose to not see each other all the time. Why? Like, what is the reason for that? I mean, does like, when you say you don't live that far from each other, like, how far are we talking? Like, same state or
same
different
state?
Okay. So apologies for saying this, but that's a bit weird in the sense that, like, most long-term relationships,
I definitely agree.
it's in the sense that most long-term relationships, long distance relationships, it's a matter of, like, you don't want to break up, but you have to be apart because of work, studying, right. Whereas you guys have actually chose that, and that's interesting. Yeah. So, like,
yeah, and I mean, I obviously could have also, like, lived with him this whole time.
Okay.
But because we were so young, we were making the conscious decision. We were still developing ourselves in who we were. Mm-hmm. I was not going to go to school with him. I was going to stay here at home. And at first it was just because I didn't have a license and he was constantly busy with school stuff. Especially once he decided he was going for a software engineering degree. It was like, free time, gone.
So it is because of circumstances then? Because, I mean, the way you made it sound before was a bit like...
To a great extent because of circumstances.
Okay, so this is sounding a bit more reasonable now, because when you said, like, oh, it's choice, it's like, what? Like, you'd want to see each other. Like, when you love each other, you want to. But
when he was done with school, I was expecting to be at his apartment like half of the time, and then COVID happened. So yes, it's not entirely by choice.
Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Yeah, I mean, if one more question, if you permit me on this, like, why not live with this person if it's possible? If that's an option, why not? Or like, because the thing is, what I will say, and because I've been single for, like, I don't know, like 2 or 3 years, something like that. And one of the things I'm looking for in another person is an independent person, because I'm an independent person. Yeah. I have a lot of things I want to achieve in life. I can't be dealing with someone who doesn't get that. They need to be independent as well. And, like, we meet in the middle. That's just what I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. You guys kind of sound similar. I am obviously assuming here, but it does seem like you've both got very different lives, doing very different things. So is that the case, or, you know, because I can understand before where you were like, hey, let's wait till we're a bit more, you know, we've grown up a bit more, been a bit more sensible.
Right.
Right. But like,
And then it was just he needed to get done with school, and
right.
yeah.
If the option is there right now, why not take it? Like, what's stopping you there? Or is it more like you want to still focus on your work and stuff?
I definitely want to. That is definitely, I'm in that camp. The actual reason why is Christian culture.
Okay.
I'm not ready to be married. And in a lot of Midwestern Christian culture, you're not supposed to live together if you're not legally married. And obviously huh?
Are you imposing this upon yourself? Okay, so I'm guessing your religion is very important to you in that sense then. Like, you don't want to.
Yeah.
Okay. And what religion
The
are
both of
you?
us, yeah.
Are you Christianity, or what's your religion?
Yeah, we're both Protestant Christians,
Mm-hmm.
non-denominational, and actually, that's very foundational to our relationship too. Like, we're very much, it's a big part of it. But I think while I've been at home, you know, being disenfranchised from the church, really struggling to relate with other Christians, he's been at school actively working in on-campus ministry, like actively serving at churches and volunteering every weekend. And so we're at this weird place where he's really concerned about his ability to be in leadership, because a lot of churches will not let you be in a leadership position. There's a lot of cult-like things. I'm gonna be honest. There are some things that could be done away with. I understand why they're there, but I think it's a little too controlling of people's exposure. Like, children should be able to see all sorts of living arrangements for couples and still be told, like, but also you're too young for that. And yeah. Anyway, because I don't understand enough of it, I'm not gonna go on a rant about that.
Okay, but like, you often hear about people these days where you can be fiercely religious, but, you know, take your own meanings, take things, you know, like, okay, I'm going to follow this, but maybe I'm not going to follow this. Like, do you think you're ever going to be like that, where you kind of go, okay, well, we'll make our own understanding together? Or is it a case of, no, we got to follow this strictly, no deviating, rules are the rules kind of deal?
We're definitely not rules of the rules. We've kind of gradually changed a lot of our beliefs over the years, actually. Mm-hmm. When we met, we were anti-gay. I mean, obviously we weren't anti-gay people, but we were like, oh, like, homosexuality isn't ideal, might even be wrong. We were anti, like, no sex before marriage. It is adultery against your future spouse. You know, like, masturbation is wrong. That's also adultery against your future spouse. Like, and that's, a lot of that has changed over the years, and we've kind of just grown together in that. So this is totally not off the table as something to question, and we're very much in the process of questioning it right now. But yeah, it does seem that the natural next step would be to move in together, and we were actually talking on the phone with a peer of his last night who was in the opposite camp, was like, you should not, you know, it's called cohabitation. You should not cohabitate because, you know, it's not healthy for the relationship long term. And we're like, well, what if sex is already, like, not on the table? What if then? Because I've only ever heard from Christianese, like, relics? No, not relics. Rhetoric that it's because you're gonna have sex before marriage, and that's bad if you're living together. And I'm like, okay.
It's almost
so
like it's like the church is kind of saying like, you can't be trusted together in the home. You're not married. Like anything could happen.
Yeah, truly. Yeah. And so like, but I actually heard the perspective last night. He said that statistically speaking, the history has been that people who live together after their first month or their first year of dating before being married are more likely to be divorced. And the reason for that was supposed to be that you're not committing, that you should get married and then move in together. You shouldn't move in together without getting married, because then anything's on the table and you're not actually committing, which makes sense in theory. But as we were, continuing to talk, Caleb was looking up and he's like, oh, interestingly enough, this statistic disappeared all over Europe once living together before marriage became more common, because a lot of Europe is in a post-Christian society, and a lot of America is holding on to a lot of those ideals. So that was definitely interesting, and so it kind of tells me that these people were only getting married in the first place because they felt like they had to, and that they were divorcing because they were not ready to be married. And so kind of at the end of the conversation, Caleb was like, so does that mean the answer is live together, and then when people ask if we're getting married, we still say we don't know? And I'm like, yeah, pretty much.
Damn, it just sounds like really stressful, like as a concept. But hey, if it makes you happy, it makes you happy. I think that's the main thing, isn't it?
I mean, the culture doesn't make me happy, but yes, Christianity itself makes me happy. The culture can be kind of overbearing.
What are the best and worst things about living in Minnesota?
Ooh. Well, like I said, I love the fringe theater scene. I love the winter. Apparently, this is not common, but for me, the winter is when I feel the most alive, emotionally, and I just think it's beautiful. I never look outside in the winter and think, ugh. But in the summer, I guess it's just overwhelming. Like there's just too much happening. And so when I look outside, there's a bunch of people and noise and things and light, and I hate it. And there's just too much going on, and I don't have time to process. So I love the winters here. And there's an idea floating around that we might move to Ireland at some point in the next few years.
Oh, wow.
And that scares me because I would not have nearly as much snow.
Why would you want to move there?
Partly because there is a team from Caleb's company there, although odds that he would be able to get on that team are quite slim. Another part is that my friend Orla is Irish and has family there, so it would be nice if all three of us could go, and we could be reunited, because right now, again, she's in Italy, and we're in the US, and it's sad. And she'd like to go there next. And then another part is I still don't know if her family lives in Ireland or Northern Ireland, because her answer was a non-answer. It was like, well, they consider it to be both. And I'm like, yes, but like as far as the governing bodies,
yeah,
which place would you like to go to? Because it makes a difference.
Did she say which place? I could probably tell you if
No, she didn't.
I didn't say. Okay, never mind.
No, yeah. If she said Derry or Dublin, I would have had an image, but no, she didn't. But yeah. So that's something I love about here. I like, to an extent, I like the people because they're not very intimidating. Like you have places like New York and London where people are like,
Yep.
stay in your lane.
That's why I moved away from London. Screw London. Anyway.
But the people here, you know, everybody smiles in the streets, and like if you need help getting someplace, everybody's happy to help, and there's just loads of extroverts. But it comes with a cost because the culture is also that there's a lot of passive aggressiveness and a lot of fake niceness. And so if you have a problem with someone, you don't just straight up tell them what the problem is. You pretend that there's no problems. And even if they ask you if there's a problem, you say, no, I love you, even though you don't.
That is something that the English are very well known for as well. I hate it because I'm very blunt. I'll just tell someone, I love you, I hate you, I don't care, right? But so many people do this where they're like, oh yeah, I love you. And behind your back, they're like, oh, they're the biggest asshole ever. Fuck them, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with you people?
It took me the longest time to figure out that not everyone who was nice was being fake nice. I literally just thought in school that everybody hated me, and I would retaliate to people asking like genuine questions or saying genuine things with really insulting and mean things. And no wonder I didn't have friends because, like, for example, I wasn't particularly like hated or looked down on or bullied in any way. And yet, if somebody asked me out, I would just laugh. Like I'd be like, haha, friends put you up to this. Bye.
Oh, like, I thought you meant like laugh like you and me.
No.
You ain't got a chance with moi.
No, I would just assume that it was a joke.
Yeah,
and,
I get it.
Yeah.
That's what I assume now in adult life. If someone seems interested in me, I'm like, is this a joke? What kind of sick play are you making it? Because it doesn't happen like, ever. So if someone does try, it's like, what's your game? What have you got a camera over there? Like, what's going on? Yeah. Jesus. Anyway, what are your goals for 2021?
Well, I recently realized that I don't dream, that when I dream, my dreams are shit. Like, my dreams will be things like, oh, maybe I could have an apartment with plants in it. Ooh, wouldn't that be nice?
That is a good dream.
Ooh,
It's not
maybe
a
I
shit
can
dream. That is the dream.
live in
That's my dream.
Okay, if you compare it to like acting in film full time,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that's
but
an
that's
objectively better dream.
yeah, but like you can still have small dreams and then like big. Because I have the same. Like I want my own apartment. That's a dream of mine. But then being a successful podcaster, content creator, yeah, those are the big dreams. But you know, the small dreams.
Yeah, I guess I just thought those were the big dreams because they seemed so unattainable. I didn't realize you're literally, when they say dream big, you're supposed to come up with the thing that you would like that you think would never happen. So,
right, okay.
like a couple months ago, I was trying to make, actually back in spring, I was trying to make a vision board, and it was literally just like studio apartments that had like divided spaces and plants. What kind of vision board?
I still think that's viable. I think that's fair because you know all of our dreams in life are based on our moment in time right now, and obviously anything can change at any moment. Sometimes overnight, sometimes through much time. You know, I mean, I can remember. When I was living abroad in Europe, you know, there were times when I was really depressed and I wanted to come back to the UK, but I just felt like I couldn't, like it wasn't viable, like I had no future here. And it sounds so stupid because you just come back, just try, right? But like I'd had such a bad experience in London that I just couldn't imagine it being good anywhere else. And then when I
Hmm.
did finally come back, because I currently live in Manchester in the north of England, and it's been really positive so far. Even though COVID has just fucked it, like I still feel really positive. I like the people, I like the culture, I like pretty much everything about it. And I often think about like how my life was, 2 years ago, 3 years ago versus now. And I'm very grateful for everything, even though I don't have much, it might not be a lot, but it's like I find myself being grateful and thankful and stuff. And that's kind of a new thing for me because for so long I would chastise life. I'd be angry. I'd be like, why don't I have this? Why don't I have this? And it's like, you got to be in the right frame of mind. You got to be grateful for what you have and keep working towards what you want. Like, I think as humans, we always want for more, but you have to like
Yeah.
recognize what you have as well. It's like, I suppose the biggest thing in my life that I want is a successful career and to be in love, to be with someone, right? Those two things.
Hmm.
And there's many other goals and stuff, but like those are the biggest two things. And you want them more intensely when you don't have them. It's just a normal
Yeah.
human thing. But not enough people practice like being grateful when you do have it. And I think that's the key, really. That's the key lesson.
Yeah. Yeah. I've and seeing what you have and using it to help you get what you want.
Yes.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
back in June, uh, or so, I remember being like, I want to work, I want to go, and I want to photograph a wedding. Like, I can't leave my house. This is awful. And I was saying that to a friend, and he was like, it was this simple. He was like, can't you work from home? And I was like, oh, my website needs to be redone. All these other things. And and um I've also streaming on Reddit. A lot of people come in. I don't know what it is, but my experience on Reddit has been that there are a lot of lower middle class to poor people on Reddit, and I don't quite know why like Reddit is the place, but a lot of people are like, you seem so blessed, and like, wow, I love your things and your space, and you are enabled. And I'm like, you're right, I have a professional recording setup. I have
Mm.
um wonderful supportive people in my life. I have um a violin of you know good enough quality that I love, um and a nice case for it, and uh, a a double bed, and just it's that's been kind of a cool sort of wake me up.
Mm-hmm. Oh, awesome. I mean, it's do you know, I remember when I was dating my ex, she had a real appreciation for like the finer things in life, and she constantly surrounds herself with nice things, right? And it sounds like a very basic thing, right? But like, I remember there was a disconnect between us on that because I grew up with like nothing, poor.
Right.
And but at the same time, like I never went without. Do you know what I mean? Like when I compare like what I dealt with versus like other people, I'm like, holy shit, I had it easy. Like I was lucky, like I'm very kind of thankful in that sense. But one thing she kind of made me realize that has changed now with my mindset is this idea that like a lot of people, when they see the finest things in life, like a really nice place, they think like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And like they almost don't afford that for themselves. They don't pit their mind
Yeah.
in they don't think like this could be something that I could have. They just think,
Right.
wow, wouldn't this be amazing? Oh, and that's probably why those people say that to you, like, wow, you have this, wow, you have that, because they don't
Yeah.
imagine it for themselves. And I think
I have,
yeah,
yeah, I have noticed
go.
that too. When they can't see any of my actual like nice things, like my microphone or like my record player, they're literally just looking at a desk with plants. They're like, wow, you have such a nice space. Like, I wish I had my shit together enough to have a space like that. And it's like, all these plants are under $5. They're exotic because they were on Etsy. Like, this desk I got from a garage sale several years ago. Like, it's just, with time you're able to accumulate, but at the same time it's like I am still very lucky. So, but I don't remember why I said that.
No, I get it. It's just, I think that the point I was trying to make is that like people should afford this for themselves. They should imagine the best possible scenario. Like with me, like I no longer think like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have this? Wouldn't it be nice to have that? I'm like, I will have that. That's going to happen. And I kind of believe in that law of attraction thing. Like you need to be in that mindset, because not only is it important in terms of being positive and stuff like that, but you will attract that towards yourself, and things will come, opportunities will come, and also you'll be in the right frame of mind to actually take advantage of that. Because a lot of those people that see that and go, wow, wouldn't that be amazing? They're just not in the right mindset. So they don't get those opportunities. They're not in the right frame of mind to take advantage of those opportunities. Really good example.
Yeah.
Years ago, I used to be like, obviously, as I told you before, like negative minded, blah, 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 right? So when I would see like an opportunity, the first thing I would think would be, oh, yeah, but that probably wouldn't work. And, oh, yeah, but what about this? And blah, 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 blah. Whereas now I'm like, do you know what? What if it works? What if this happens? What about this? Oh, and this, and oh, and then my mind just, goes. Positivity, I'm telling you, positivity and the law of attraction and these things. This is
Absolutely.
This is where people's minds need to be.
My mom thinks I'm kind of out there because I get excited about like the simplest things, and I treat very small opportunities as huge opportunities. I mean, any work in theater is extremely exciting to me. Right. Like any opportunities in photography is extremely exciting to me. Just having a website, ordering business cards, it's like, whoa, progress is being made.
Yeah.
And I'll treat things like this, you said earlier, like this is work, this is unpaid work right now, but it's still work towards your future. And I think about it the same way. And I didn't have time for something earlier, and so she was like, kind of getting on me about it, and I was like, when you're late for work, we pick up your slack. And she's like, you're not working. And I was like, that's not the attitude I can have. That won't get me anywhere. If I'm not thinking about work in terms of where it will get me versus what it will give me, then I'm not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I work my ass off with this stuff. And it's not earning me any money at the moment, but it will. And my attitude and my approach is kind of like that, that old saying of dress for the job that you want, not the job that you have.
Yeah.
Like, I approach the way that I do this the same way. So I imagine that this is like a really successful podcast that is doing really well and it's really professional. I'm under no illusion that there's barely any viewers and blah, blah, blah. But I look at the little mini progress, like look at the guests I've been able to get so far. Look at the fact that we've got to like 60 episodes. That's amazing. Look at the fact that this is happening and that's happening. That's what I'm looking at. And, life moves quickly. It moves fast. Before you know it, like a lot of things have happened. And you'll be like, wow, that happened so quickly. Like, I remember when it was like this. And that's the reality of the situation. But yeah, I totally agree with you. You need to approach everything that you consider important in life as like, yeah, this will earn me money one day. Because it will happen. It's just everyone expects, it's this instant gratification culture. Everyone expects things to happen like that. And that's just not how life works. Life is slow and things come to you when they're supposed to come to you, not when you want them to come to you. It's when you're ready for them and at the right moment and blah, blah, blah.
To be honest, I like it better that way because, like, with my podcast, if I had just started recording things right away when I came up with the concept, I wouldn't have the podcast I have now. I know a lot of people are like, just start, and I understand there's a lot of merit to just starting, but I think when the time is right, you need to just start. But sometimes things just aren't working out the way you need them to, or you're just not prepared. And I'm really glad that I waited and that I kept reforming and stuff, because this has been really helpful for me. And I think otherwise it would have turned into a vanity project, and I don't need that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because sometimes I think about like, oh, I should have done YouTube years ago. I should have done the podcast years ago. Do you know what? No, I shouldn't, because that would have been the wrong time and my head wouldn't have been in the right place.
Yep.
And things happen the way they're supposed to happen. I think that I had to go and live abroad and come back and go through the various hurdles that I went through to be in the mindset to think, hey, yeah, I should start a podcast finally. Because it's not like I haven't wanted to do it for years. Same with YouTube. I wanted to do YouTube 7 or 8 years ago when I first set up my account, and I didn't have the confidence or self-esteem to properly do it until like a couple of years, 2019. And now that it's finally happened, like it took some time. I think it took at least, I'd say about a year before I started making content that was like, okay, this is like a YouTuber now and not like a guy trying to be a YouTuber. And it's the same with the podcast. If you listen to the early episodes, I still stand by them. I still think they're good. They're good and they have worth and value, but I'm more proud of the interviews that I've done. And I see that as, over time, I've felt more comfortable and I feel like it's gotten better. And things, it takes time. You get better as you practice and you try things in life. And I think also to a degree, you have to live a life as well. Like, I feel like, those people that get like really successful at like 19, 20, 21, they've not lived, and that's why it goes to their heads and they can't handle it and they go nuts and they go on drugs and shit. It's just because they can't handle it. And let's be honest, most people wouldn't be able to. You need to live a life, see some shit, do like regular everyday jobs and live life and be there, and then you have something to talk about and be like, hey, this happened and this, and it's like being relatable as well. That's a thing I think many celebrities and rich and successful people struggle with, is because they maybe weren't a regular person, or maybe if not very long, like they were always in the limelight, so they just don't know how to relate to the common person, so to speak.
Yeah, my parents did consider trying to get me into modeling and acting as a very young child, just because I was very photogenic. I was cute. This isn't the person I am. I'm not complimenting myself. But I was a very cute kid, and I was a natural at that sort of thing. And so they were like, they wanted to try to do that, but they're like, no, we don't want to get her involved in that sort of thing before she has a choice. And I used to be mad because I grew up being like, yeah, I wish I was doing that. And so when I found out that they almost gave me a head start as like a little kid, I was upset. But now I'm like, how would I have found myself?
Yeah.
Like, I would have already been doing the thing. Why should I find a better purpose for it if I'm already doing it?
I think it's good as well to not have the things that you want in life for a certain amount of time, because it makes you appreciate it more. Like, in the time that I've not, like, for instance, that I've been single, it's really reinforced like what I want, but it's also given me time to think about exactly what it is I want, because for a long time I was like, I thought this is what I wanted, but now I'm like, I know what I want now. And you need that time of not having the thing, so that when you finally get it, you know how to appreciate it and it will mean that much more as well. Whereas if you're just given stuff in life, I don't think you can really appreciate it. Yeah.
So, goals for 2021: release podcasts, talk to more friends, learn cities gymnopedies with my harpist friend, and clean and maintain a clean room. Those are the things.
Good, solid goals. And as we draw things to a close for today, do you have any final thoughts or maybe some upcoming projects that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I think just getting the email out there. If anybody's truly interested in that mailing list, it's I'm here now podcast@gmail.com. But yeah, other than that, no. Well, actually, 3 hours. What did I tell you?
Yep, you're not wrong.
Um,
It's good though. Sometimes it happens. That's one thing I like about my podcast is that, like I was going through some of the older episodes earlier, and I realized like some of them are as short as like 20 minutes, 45 minutes. I think one of them is even like 16 or 17 minutes long, like in the very beginning. And then the average is about an hour and a half or 2 hours. And there's like a couple that are 3 hours, I think. So this would be up there. This would be one of the longer ones. But I just want to say like a big thank you for appearing on the show. It's been a real pleasure talking to you and getting to know you and also just tapping into your mind and stuff and seeing what you're about and whatnot. So big thank you for agreeing to be on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's good to talk to a real human.
yeah, absolutely. I know how you feel with that one. I just want to say to all my listeners of the Christian Reeve podcast, make sure to go and support Eleanora with her podcast and everything that she's doing. And also for the Christian Reeve podcast, make sure, as always, you're liking and sharing and subscribing to the YouTube channel, that you're checking out all of the new platforms that we're available on. We've become available on Verbal, I believe, and Listen Notes. I believe it's about 10 different audio streaming platforms. So wherever you do listen to the podcast, make sure to drop a review, give us a rating. All that helps towards my goal of getting some sponsorships for this podcast and getting the wheels in motion for that. So your support is invaluable there. For those who are unaware, I recently set up a Patreon, so make sure you go check out that. It's patreon.com/Christian Reeve. And are we done with the plugs? I think we're done with the plugs. Thank you very much for listening to the Christian Reeve podcast. And until next time, peace out, one love. I'll see you in the next one.